All right, do it. I know that this is just me shitting on Ryan's vision for this this intro video.
I'm really into this.
Well, it's important. I'm glad that we have it.
Yeah, it's crucial.
It's important.
Got to hear that channel.
And I love the little wolf in it. I love the wolf emoji. It's so cute.
It's nice. Welcome back to Wolfpack, counting down to our 3-year anniversary.
That's right.
Unfucking believable.
I'm proud of us.
After all these years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how long normal book clubs last, or how many books they tend to get through. But
my coworker told me that he has been in a book club for like 15 years or something, and they read comics together.
Oh, that sounds easy.
Yeah.
I guess to keep up with.
Yeah, I was also impressed. I was like, maybe someday we'll be together. I'll tell my younger coworker that I have been in a book club for 15 years.
I feel like in 12 years from now, Wolfpack's going to be like a new world religion or something.
That's ambitious.
Almost as ambitious as thinking that I might have a real job in 15 years. With
the idea of a job will be passé.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully.
That'd be cool. We were talking about that earlier. Jobs.
I'm working on that project right now.
Oh, I'm
no
seriously considering terminating my own employment.
Okay, look, as someone who quit,
yeah,
and is now like on a short-term contract job. Mm-hmm. Not having a job is better than having a job. I feel like I can definitively say that now after having a job, not having a job, and then sort of having a job again.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't do it. If you can avoid it, it's the worst. It's just too much time.
Yeah, it's too much time.
I mean, part-time job maybe could be cool.
I gotta say, as goofy as my current situation is, if you can work for another cartoon, a person who is also a cartoon, as we all seem to be, that can work out nicely. As long as they understand, all of life is a giant farce. We're going to be ridiculous.
Yeah. Even still, then you're still spending your time on that cartoon, and you're like, this isn't really. And so I think if you want to, as long as you're like enjoying that, or it's like fulfilling you in some way, that's good. But if it's not,
but also,
then it's a bad cartoon.
But you're not working for him 40 hours a week.
No, exactly.
I mean,
yeah.
And anytime I don't want to work for him, I can just be like, I'm leaving now.
No, 40-hour work week. I know we fought for that because it used to be like a fucking limitless hour work week, but
we don't need that.
It's not the end point. We just need to keep fighting it back down further.
That's the weird thing about Star Trek TNG is that like it's like a utopia, right? But they're all working all the time. Like they're at work constantly. Like they're
because they're in the military. Utopia is the military.
Right.
That was their choice. They did that because they are nerds.
It's true. It is just Starfleet members, but still, it's like that's not.
It is a universe of only autistic people.
I mean, there are plenty of leftist utopias that are very labor centric.
Mm-hmm. But working. I mean, I still generally, I'm like, I have to split this up because I generally agree that like, so the Star Trek people are like working all the time, and that's not ideal. But there is also a difference between working and wage labor. Like it's a very different thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I love working on stuff. Like we all do. We all love working on stuff. We work on stuff all the fucking time. And that's why wage labor sucks, because it takes time away from the shit you want to work on. Not because you want to just sit on the couch. Granted, there should also be time for that. There should be time for like staring at the wall. But I mean, I'm not anti-work. I'm anti-wage labor.
I need to speak for myself and say that I don't want to work because I do want to sit on the couch and I don't want to do other projects, and I literally don't want to spend time on anything.
Well,
I
you
should
should-
speak for myself. And
That
say
should also be an option.
Yeah, that's totally legit.
Exactly.
That should
Like,
also be a
I
fucking
think-
option.
I think having a life purpose is amazing, and I'm like really happy for the people who have one, and things that they want to create and bring into the world. But I'm really happy that I'm not one of those people.
I would not say that I feel like I have a life purpose. I mean, there's like stuff I want to do, but I definitely don't. I feel like
I'm
know.
talking in a general sense.
Yeah.
I think
But
that none of this
also-
can be realized until we make this shift in our culture where we put less weight on achievement and more weight on contemplation. We don't value a contemplative life. We only value achievement, do.
Mhm.
Which is actually something that I see a lot in my job.
Which is funny because like the ends of achievement are all things that are like not really psyched about. Like
Right.
you do really good for the system. You help the system like race towards our destruction.
Well, I also feel like even if you do achieve, if you don't take any moment to contemplate that, like how can you feel achievement? Right.
I think a lot of really successful people don't ever. feel
Exactly.
it. Yeah, that's why.
Exactly,
Well,
because they
I
don't know
mean,
how to
and it
sit back
is-
and look at what they've done.
It is crucial it is absolutely crucial for there to be time in the mix where you're not doing shit. Like
Mhm.
but that's why you can't have like a 40-hour work week, because you got to be able to do all the things you want to do and then also have plenty of time to like not do anything.
Well, also
Like a
life
2-day
takes time.
weekend is fucked. Like I'm
Mhm.
still tired, and it's
Yeah.
Sunday. I mean, even at Bonsai when I was working full time, I wasn't working 5 days a week. It's like brutal.
And that whole 40-hour like setup was all created under the idea that there was going to be a couple with one person who does all of the like necessary labor at the house, and somebody else who goes out and does all those hours to get the money. Like there was never when that was created, there was never a possibility that a single person was going to have to do all that.
Or that both people, I like two people, you both work, and then you come home and you clean the house all weekend.
Yeah, it wasn't part of the situation.
Or else you just like live in a fucking pile. You should see my house right now. It's just one big pile.
Or the thing is, like, it still works for people who are excessively wealthy, like my boss at the Pratt, who has a maid service come over and clean their house for them because they make over $100,000 a year. You're right, yeah. So, that's like another thing is like if you're super wealthy, like the 40-hour work week isn't so bad because people cook for you every night, people clean for you. And in general, you don't really have much of a life or much of an interiority. And so going to work is actually quite satisfying in a way.
Right.
Also,
work is a different thing when your job is to be like, this is what I want you guys to do. Do
Absolutely.
it. Great
yeah,
job.
and when you're working at that level too, you don't really got to be there all the time. Like,
No, you don't have to do much.
people
either.
at that
And that's
level are
not-
like in and out. Like you'll see, they're like passing through, and
Yeah, I don't.
you're not going
I'm
to know
not
what
even
they're up to
being-
most of the time.
I'm not even being cynical or absurd here. Like the higher up you go, the less you do for sure.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like so crazy. Like
That's the whole thing. It's like levels of privilege. But then
Well,
also when you work, the other thing about working all the time is you spend so much more money because you're too tired to, even on a worker level, it's like you're too
Right.
tired to like cook every meal.
Well, that's
You know?
I mean,
Like the
remote-
more you work, the more you make, the more you spend, and it's like
Absolutely.
impossible cycle to get out of.
remote working over the last year really made a huge difference for me. Like
Mhm.
being able to like have more of a morning and like I had time to exercise, I had time to read and write every morning, and like I was making my lunch every day. Like it's just everything. I mean, obviously the reason I was working from home was shitty, but like the reality of working from home for me was fantastic.
Well,
Yeah.
it also really depends on what kind of work you're doing. Because, like, right now, ostensibly, I have a good setup. Like, I'm working at the BMA. I can bike there in like 4 minutes. Like, I could come home for lunch if I want to. I like, don't, it's 8:30 to 4:30, which is like pretty good hours. like reasonable, like there's like plenty of time to have a morning, plenty of time to have, but it's like you're standing up all day and it's like a physical job. And it's just like, it doesn't even matter how much time you have. You're just so fucking tired. Like if you were doing like a more chill job physically.
I mean, office job from home is
good.
So because most of the time you're just doing whatever you feel like. Like you're not just plugged in. I mean, to some degree you're like plugged in, but like.
But office job from office is also draining in an existential way. Like it is draining.
I also think sitting at a desk all day is physically demanding in a different way too. I'm not trying to like.
When I went through
orientation,
they specifically directed you like you have to get up and walk around like for 10 minutes every 2 hours. Physically, you have to do that. That's important. And then you get into the office and they're like, you can't do that. You got too much to do. It's like, whoa.
No, I'm just so.
There are a lot of different office experiences.
Yeah.
Because I live like 15-minute walk from work. So I come home like every day for lunch. And like, I don't know. I feel like my time in the office, I have my own office though. So I don't know, Tim, what your thing is, but like, I feel kind of like I don't know.
Having your own zone
what
makes
am
a
I trying to
huge
say?
difference. Like,
yeah, I think that might be the difference.
Like,
That
I
feel...
have like a cubicle kind of thing, and it's just, like if I'm listening to something, there's somebody else listening to it and then talking to me about it.
My office is a cubicle, but it has a door, and it's like a real door, and it's a little higher than. If I stand up, no one can see me.
Mine's like no door. Like the thing's only like 5 feet high or whatever, 5.5 feet maybe.
But even then, I feel pretty. I feel like I have my own like space. I think that's so important. Like I could never work in an open floor plan. And that's one of the reasons I will try to never leave my job is that I don't know what the office is going to be like somewhere else. Listening to you guys talk about your experience working in the office makes me like really value the good things about my job that I kind of like read all day if I want to. Like I do my work, but I can get everything done. And then I can be like, oh, okay, time to read my library book for a while, time to do some online shopping. And I guess if people could see me, I don't know if I would be so free about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. The thing is that the lifestyle I think works for different people too. You have it sounds like a good situation, which is really fortunate, and B, I mean, I don't know, like you seem like very zen this morning in general, and like maybe you're just a really well-adjusted human being, and like
I think I actually think that because now that I'm talking about it, my time in the office before pandemic, I was really like stressed out all the time and my body hurt all the time and I didn't have enough time for anything. And so, yeah, I think I gained a lot of different perspective. Like what I think it was partially is that spending a year and a half in my house all the time, I think I finally got like the personal time that I needed to myself. So like, the thing about leaving the house every day is that you're having these like minor, barely interactions that add up and you're like on display, you know what I mean, in a certain way. And you have to navigate other people's day kind of. Two, you're always having to think about your relation to other people all day, in my opinion, like in my experience. So that just like takes so much energy. And like, sitting, not having roommates and being all by myself and being like, I don't need to be considerate of anybody else for an entire year and a half was like, I think really like helped with my like, I guess my boundaries, like my personal, like, I guess literally what I'm talking about is like energy and like energetic boundaries and vibes and auras and shit, I think is what I'm talking about. That like I had time to like cleanse my aura, I guess, of other people's energy. And now I feel more like stable in my own energy. Also, the thing that I have to mention that I have mentioned before is that I did go on antidepressants. So that may have helped significantly in my like not being pushed and pulled by other people's presence all the time.
I totally feel the aura thing though. Like I think that being away from the office and having a lot of time to myself has like made a huge difference in how I now interact in that environment. Like I mean, part of it's that I started a new job like right before a pandemic, but like my vibe in the office and just in work in general now is way better. like way different. So I mean it's been very helpful, but I do wish that I could still be working from home because that really was good for me. I like my coworkers, like my job's not bad, but I just
I need to also mention that I do only work from the office 3 days a week and I'm home 2 days a week. Yep. And so like that's probably the most major difference is that
I'm so
having like I said, I work a 15-minute walk from home. So that's really like, I think that gives me significant more time in the morning than other people, but not having to like pick out clothes and make sure I eat and make sure I have food and maybe have to like buy a $15 lunch if I'm not like getting myself together correctly, is a huge, huge difference. Like every single day, being able to only do that 3 days a week is like, and it also means because I took one of my days from home is Friday. So that means I technically sort of have like a 3-day weekend. But one of the days I just have to look at my email because I barely get anything on Friday. So like, basically I'm just bragging. I'm really just bragging about having a like, a terrible office job that's well suited to my life, I guess is what I'm bragging about, which isn't a huge deal, but it is actually a huge deal. It sucks that that's something I'm bragging about. We're like,
like, my job doesn't make me want to kill myself every day.
Yeah. Like that's it. That should be the baseline. Like I should be all of everyone's job should be like mine and that it's suited to their lifestyle. And then we all should be complaining about how we have to be there and how it sucks still. Because that's how it should be. That's really how it should be, is that we should never have, like Jen started talking about this, like we should never have given up the adversarial relationship with bosses and work and rich people. We should always, that's why we're like now losing 40 hours basically. Like a lot of office people work like 60-hour weeks. And don't get paid more because they're salaried and stuff. Like that's fucking crazy. That is crazy. That should be very illegal, but it's the thing that people aspire to. Someone in my position should aspire to be salaried. I'm like technically hourly right now and I would never give that up. Like who would do that? It's insane. But we started loving our bosses or something. Like it's crazy.
Our identity is our job, and that's not good.
It's also the bosses. The bosses started wanting to be loved. Also, like that wasn't always a thing. Yeah.
That's a boomer thing. I don't think it's just bosses. My mom actually complains all the time about how people who are parents that are her age, she feels starting with when her people became parents, they started wanting to be friends with their kids She has a problem with that. She's like,
Yeah.
we raised a generation of assholes because we were trying to be friends with you and we didn't give you enough structure and discipline. And now I find a lot of you unpleasant. She doesn't say that anymore, but it's implied.
My dad was not one of those dads, and I was like always so annoyed growing up. I was like, oh, why can't my dad just be nice? And now I'm like watching other people. I'm like, I am so fucking glad that my dad rode my ass and made me say please and thank you, and made me like acknowledge and understand the existence of other people. Like if I would do something rude, he would explain what I did. He would be like, listen, this is what you just did to that person. This is what you just said. They just did this nice thing and you did this. And I'd be like, well, fuck. And now I'm like very polite person. And I recently have several times been complimented on how like kind I am. And it made me feel like, whoa, people are fucking assholes. I'm just being normal. I'm just being a totally normal person. I'm not even being especially nice. I'm just talking to someone and so one of the times every time it's been on the phone talking to a customer service person. So that's really telling. One of the times it was, I had a problem with my computer at work and an IT guy called me to fix it. And the first 3 things he did didn't work. And he's like, I'm so sorry, I need to try something else. And I was like, that's fine, man. Like, take all the time you need. As soon as you're done, I have to work. So I didn't say that part, but in my head, I was like, when you're done, I have to start working again. So I don't care how long this takes. And then like 2 times he was like, thank you for being so patient and kind. It's making this so much easier. And I was like, fuck. People were mean because it was like 4:30. Like people were mean to this guy all day and he was stressed. And I could hear in his voice, like I could hear when we started talking that he was tired.
Tech support can be a rough gig. Sometimes.
My dad was IT for a fancy tech company. And he has this story where like the workers, the office dudes the engineers, like the computer programmers and stuff wouldn't give him their passwords because their stuff where they were working on was so important. But he was like, okay, I need to come to your office to work on your computer though, because you asked me to. And this one guy would be like, okay, come at like 12:30 and I'll be here. And he would, every day my dad would go to his office and he wouldn't be there at the time the dude told him to be there. So finally my dad was like, fine. And he just changed the guy's password because he's IT and he can do that. He didn't know the password. He just changed it, went in, fixed the problem, wrote him a note that was like, here's your new password. I did this so I could fix your computer. And the guy called him and was like yelled at him, or maybe yelled at him in person and was like, this is a top secret thing. And I need to be in the room when you're working on my computer so I can know that you didn't steal my secrets. And he was just like, whatever. Like I needed to do this.
That's what it's like. That is absolutely what it's like. So
damn.
Not always. There's a lot of sitting around in tech support also. It's unless you're overworked, which a lot of tech places don't have enough staff. But if you're properly staffed, then you spend a fair amount of time just waiting for things to happen, which is fine. Because you can do other things. Like
he has stories about
when you get in ventures with Moss.
Yeah, exactly. Like the IT crowd.
I
don't have a Richard Iowati in my office, unfortunately. What do you think about jobs in the world?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we've been talking for like an hour.
And you would talk about working all the time. I mean,
yeah, they do.
It's funny that they're in the last 2 chapters, which I guess is where our territory is today. There's a talk about like the riots are partially because of the heat and partially because of prices going up. And I feel it's like we're like what, a year away from the exact same situation.
No, we're in it.
We're in it.
Supply chain problems are becoming increasingly intense. I think.
it's like we've really watched food just skyrocket since Biden, and but there's been, there was like a bunch of riots last year. No riots yet this year. So I was thinking maybe next year riots again.
Well, there's a couple months left.
The post-Trump honeymoon being over, and maybe there's like a little, there's a bump in COVID and when it gets cold as if they're supposed to be. So people get a little cooped up again. Then they're like, I got to get out of here. Tell me what to protest.
Yeah.
People in the United States don't demonstrate over economic issues anymore.
It's true.
We can't analyze things on that basis. We have we're not allowed to have class consciousness.
It's
and that's
interesting.
why we can't fight. That's why you can't be mad at the boss. Because you can't be mad at the boss.
Yeah.
Because one day I'm going to be the boss.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah.
That's the whole fucking thing. You can't be mad at rich people because you're just a rich person who hasn't hit it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not. You're a serf and they're a lord, and there's a distinction, and you'll never be one.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, but Americans just aren't ready to discuss class too. Like, I feel like whatever, like the education system and the ruling powers and the media did a really good job of like scrubbing class consciousness out of popular discourse.
Just not the lens has been like put in the drawer, and you're not allowed to look through it. Like it's like any other lens.
Do you
it's
think
not
that
it's not an axis that people look for, that people
that's
discuss
the
or think
whole point
about.
of like identity politics.
Do you think that
the fact that so like people who are like Marxists, quote unquote Marxists, etc., socialists, are right now, they're mostly like academics, right? Like people who are writing, or like weird people online.
Who I think are mostly also academics or like from academic institutions in one like capacity or
I
another.
don't know, because I think a lot of the really big names are people who have never read any book at all.
Are we talking? I'm just like, are we talking about Red Scare? That's who comes to my mind first.
I'm just talking about Twitter, just like Twitter people.
Yeah.
The mass. I'm talking about the mass. Like,
but they're all college educated, aren't they?
Right.
well, maybe college educated, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that you got, because that
when you're talking about like injustice and like theories of injustice, I think it makes a big difference when you're college educated.
I'm talking about class consciousness. I'm talking about like that level of like, so the like people who would be considered activists. I don't know if we would have called them activists during like the Russian Revolution or something.
Yeah.
Like those were like people. Those were dudes. And okay, no, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, someone like Red Scare, someone like Jacobin Magazine, Current Affairs.
Like all those people are fluent in college.
But the thing about Red Scare isn't really like, that's not really Red Scare's deal though. Red Scare are more like, they're not positioning themselves like most of the podcasts, unless it's like a political podcast, isn't really, that's not really the stuff they're talking about. Like, I think most of those podcasts, I haven't really listened to them, but from what I gathered, it sounds like they mostly just talk about what happened on Twitter.
Okay, so wait, I'm just trying to get a hold of what you're. Sorry.
Okay,
like?
I had a point. I started to.
Where
have
are we getting to?
Which was that I like. Who are there any people who would be considered like workers who are public
thought leaders of any kind.
Right. Yeah.
Where are the blue collar
right.
Marxist leaders?
It's a class.
Yeah.
It's an academic class.
Where like already you have to be college educated and be able to read someone like Marx or whatever. Like that is seen in America as like what someone with class consciousness would be. You know what I mean? Like it's because they don't know that much, but you know what I mean? It's like, that's the image. And that's an image that most people with like actual life experience don't want anything to do with. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. So I know it's kind of controversial character, but I listened to Noam Chomsky one time talk about his childhood, I guess somewhere in Brooklyn or the Bronx or something like that. And he said that he often laments and describes that there was like this active like intellectual culture amongst the working people in his neighborhoods back in the 30s and whenever it was when he was a little kid. There were like bookstores around with like kind of like Red Emmas, you know, but not like hipster, you know, just like they were like just selling books, and everyone went in and bought books and like had discussions about class consciousness, you know, like the mechanics and the fucking longshoremen and the guys working in the buildings and stuff like that. Like that was like something that he grew up around and like saw. And then he, in his estimation, like that kind of culture is largely diminished. And in fact, I would say, yeah, I would totally agree. Like, is no longer at all the case right now. Like, and it's very difficult. And in general, yeah, when you log on to Twitter, people are talking about class consciousness, right? Like more so than when I was growing up. Like it's cool to go on Twitter and just see like, you know, like some hot person like with a selfie as their picture, you know, being like, yeah, it's fucked up that I don't get paid enough at work. And that I'm glad that that's something that's happening. But you're right in that in general these days, having class consciousness generally means that you're someone who went to college and grew up in a certain kind of income level, generally, not 100%. But
I think part of it is because people are so overworked and underpaid. Like wages, like you can't support a family on a single normal ass wage anymore. Like
you support yourself.
Wages are so fucked that you have to work so much more. It's like you're too fucking tired. People are too fucking tired to like read at the end of the day. It's just like not gonna happen.
I think it's by design that you know, socialism, communism, theory became like a gate-kept golden tower kind of deal. I think that's by design. And
it worked out really well with identity politics in that like all of these really well-meaning theories coalesced in a place where like normal people could not access or understand them. And then like the elite in media were able to get like kind of first dibs on those ideas and figure out how to present them to the regular people in a way that would like completely defang them. And actually,
absolutely.
I wonder how much.
You're totally right.
I wonder how much of that loss of like sort of working class intellectualism is due to the collapse of like manufacturing and union based labor.
Yeah,
because I feel like unions are like a really key entry point, or historically had been a really key entry point into like progressive or leftist thought in the working class, because everybody was involved in it. Like you're sort of immersed in those kinds of ideas and that kind of rhetoric, and so then it's very approachable because you're already familiar with a lot of the core aspects of like what those texts are getting at.
I'm also kind of interested to see like, you know, both of the big museums in town have like BMA just in it. Like Walters has been in their like union struggle for a few months now, and BMA just went public on Friday.
MICA staff and faculty are unionized,
and the MICA one too. And I think there's an interesting thing where it's like the museum is kind of a funny place where like intellectualism and like labor are kind of collide in this way. where you have a lot of people who are like legitimate like workers, like working, who are also college educated, and one of the interesting things about that is that I will be interested to see how it plays out, is that definitely that is the group of people who are like pushing for unionization, not like the security guards and stuff, but there's very intentional language and very specific intent around in the structuring of the push for unionization around like making sure that all of those workers are also like not left out. Like so it'll be interesting, I think, to see if they can do it, first of all, and like, but if it pans out, like how that will affect, just whether that will have a good effect on like whether that could kind of like spur anything else, because if you get, I don't know.
I think
if you could get,
I don't think it's
a few good unions going, then other people, it's like people will hear about it, and then it's like, oh, this is working out, like.
Yeah.
Because
I don't think that it's
those people just get fucked, like the people who are like the security guards and like the facilities maintenance people and stuff. They're off like.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Well, Mark's point about manufacturing being a really like an entry point to unionizing and class consciousness is how like it's not really a coincidence that all of those industries moved overseas.
Yeah, exactly.
When we used to have a lot of factories.
Well, that's kind of why they moved overseas. It's cheaper there because it's non-unionized labor,
Yeah.
I remember a couple years ago, my friend Rose told me, she was it worked in an office at a university, and that they had a meeting, like the all hands staff meeting, where the dean talked about how one day all of their jobs would be replaced by robots. So that's a potential outcome from unionization.
Oh, well, yeah, union or not, I mean, companies would love that and are, investing in technology that will do such things. And I think that's a good thing. I think, and we've even talked about this before. I mean, if your job can be automated by a machine,
why not?
I mean, theoretically,
I welcome it. They already treat us like robots. The people who use our services already treat us like robots. So I wouldn't mind if a robot actually had the job, to be honest. I could do literally anything else.
There's a way that this scenario breaks good, and there's a way that this scenario breaks very, very bad.
Right.
And there's also probably infinite ways that it plays out that we have no way of coming up with right now. And that's probably what will happen.
Only breaks bad.
No, there is a theoretical. Probably won't happen this way, but there is a theoretical way where all the jobs are automated, and because of that, value is just produced by the robots, and we can just use that to sustain our lives while we contemplate what the universe is, and we all become Jesus Christ together. But that's probably not what's going to happen.
I was with you for most of it.
There's like a theoretical.
Jesus is a metaphor, man. We don't have to become the literal guy.
There's a theoretical way.
We don't have to, but we can.
I mean, there is a universe in which we all become Jesus, the literal thing, and we fight Satan like a fucking Voltron. But
if it's Willem Dafoe Jesus, I will come along, but only if it's Willem Dafoe.
That's where this is going. This is exactly what this book is about.
The book we're reading?
It's about
the larger book, certainly. Each of the things that we've seen, the last one is a bigger step in that direction, but that's somewhat happening here. And then in the third book, Jesus Christ. Oh, that had no attachment to the Jesus we were talking about earlier. That was just an exclamation.
Just a different Jesus.
I have so many different complex relationships with Jesus Christ.
Don't we all?
Should we talk about the book?
Yeah,
I like talking about the book.
I do too.
Do you want to start with Silk and his silent prayers?
Ryan's gonna explode if we don't talk about Lemur.
Yeah, we'll talk about Lemur. We're getting there. Well, that's the chapter we're on, right? We're on 12.
That's right.
Yeah, I think we can
All
do
right.
12 and 13.
Lame.
And then we're at the end of Litany or whatever, which one this one is.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So,
Nice.
is this the prayer where, this is where Crane is kind of doing commentary, his like atheist commentary on the prayer, which is really great. Does anyone have cast? Have we talked about this? Has anyone cast these roles? I
don't think so.
I just had this unshakable image reading these last couple chapters where I had Crane played by Gus Fring, Lemur played by Jonathan Banks, Mike Ehrmantraut, and then there was somebody else. No,
Are you just naming British actors that we don't know about?
no,
Yeah.
I'm naming people from Breaking
Breaking
Bad.
Bad.
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh.
it's just like
Oh, Crane's small.
Okay, wait, go back.
yeah, Crane
Go
is
back.
short. That is the problem. But
Who is the Crane character you mentioned from Breaking Bad?
oh, Gus Fring, he's like this very. I mean, he's not short, but he's very slim and has like a very, he has a very thin
What character?
presence.
What character is he?
He's the guy who runs the chicken restaurant.
Oh, yeah,
that is-
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You picture him as Crane. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't picture Crane as thin.
Huh. Yeah, I tried to do Danny DeVito in my head and I couldn't make it work.
Yeah, I picture Crane as the
Whoa,
guy
whoa.
who plays what's her name? The dad of the character in Clueless. You know that actor, that like guy with like the wiry black hair.
That's Crane. Interesting.
That's who I
What-
see him as.
Oh,
We're getting into a thing that I've been finding very interesting in this. I've just reread all of this. Is he's probably Middle Eastern, right?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Dan had died.
Right.
Okay.
All the Trivaganti and therefore
Yeah.
Willett and Crane are probably Middle Eastern.
Wait, but he's blending in though.
Well,
So he's probably kind of Iranian.
So, maybe
We don't know.
yeah.
No, because he's whatever.
We
Well,
don't
that
know
makes-
where he's from.
whatever.
That makes a lot of sense
Well, we
because
can't know.
Trivagant is in like medieval poetry is like a name that gets thrown in with Muhammad and Baphomet
Right.
and like the gods of Islam.
Right. Which so I don't know why I haven't really thought about this that much in the past, but the war that's coming is a fairly Catholic Christian city, and the Muslims, Islam,
It's
which in the
not-
Middle Ages they took over Spain, which this is a very Spanish flavored Catholicism, it seems to me. It's I don't know why I never saw that before, but like I feel like that's all over this.
Yeah, you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah.
That's cool. This is why, what it is that we just never thought about it.
But that's weird because I'm reading I read shit about the Crusades all the time because of the Knights Templar and all that.
Sure.
I love the Holy Grail.
No, it's probably because no, never mind. So oops. And his real name is like Hosan.
Yeah, Hassan. Yeah,
Hassan.
yeah.
oh. Well.
And what else? Well, you're simply correct, Connor.
Thank you.
I have nothing else to add. In my opinion. Maybe someone else disagrees with me.
So wait, going back, Ryan, you said that you thought Crane was Gus,
Yeah.
and then who did you think Lemur was?
I think Lemur, the Lemur is complicated because it's like a young robot body, but the voice and the personality is all Jonathan Banks, who plays Mike on Breaking Bad. In like
that the
the
cop?
boasting, he's the crooked cop that is like, he's also in Better Call Saul. He's like an ex-cop.
Oh, that
yeah,
guy.
Yeah, that guy's cool.
Yeah, the
He's in an
bald
episode
dude.
of DS9 too.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of shows.
What's his name?
His real name is Jonathan Banks. The character's name is Mike Ehrmantraut.
I haven't seen any of those shows, so I have to look up later.
He was in Airplane in 48 Hours. But he's got this voice that's like really good, I feel like, for Lemur, of this kind of like, he's really good at, I feel like, doing the sort of smart and funny, but like ironclad, you can't cross a tough guy. But
Yeah.
he's not sad or insecure in any way.
Interesting.
Which is funny because Lemur is like insanely insecure, as will come in here.
I gotta confess that I cannot picture the counselors in robot bodies that look like humans. I picture them in very robot-looking bodies.
It's
like boxy screen with their face on it on the front. I know that's
Like
that's
Crane.
not what is described in the book, but like
well, how
It's
is it
what I
described in
see.
the book? Because that's kind of how I saw Lemur.
Well,
also.
Silk doesn't realize it's like a a fake body, so it's
Yeah.
got to be at least that. But I guess
He's
also
very
he's been around chems his whole life, so maybe
no,
yeah,
but they have a skin. They're not like he is around chems and like he describes the chems when they don't, as having metal faces and stuff like that, and not the counselors. I know that the counselors
Wait,
because they have skin that suddenly glows.
Mhm.
wait, I have a point. Marble mentions when she's having her weird thing that she knows that she used to have a skin face or something. But
Mhm.
do you think that could be that a part of someone else talking? Or
Oh no, she used to have a skin, but that's
Okay.
the counselors have better robot bodies than the
it's just
chems that have
because
been
they're
working for
old.
300 years. And like when she gets Rose's hands, she's like, well, now I got these hands that look like actual old lady hands.
Yeah,
Because
it's just
she
that
has hands molded to be old lady.
she has a metal face because she's old.
Right.
Because
She's
the
lost
skin's worn
the
away.
skin.
And
Probably because of heat, right? Which must have been horrific when you're made just like her face is slowly melting off because of the coils inside her just overheating. And it's just sliding
Just
off her face.
aging as a chem. That's what it's
Yeah.
like. I always see the counselors, or in this chapter at least, I see them very much as like villains in an anime, or like M. Bison from Street Fighter. Is
Sure.
kind of how I see Lemur. And
Yeah,
like,
there's-
a lot of that comes from how they talk too. Like when Lemur's talking about himself, he's like a cartoon character.
he's a
right?
Bond
Like,
villain.
Yeah, exactly. He's describing he's like just giving you all his exposition about his abilities, and you can almost sense that Wolfe is trying to sell an action figure of Lemur. He's like, look at my like ability to like move things down my arm. Like, isn't that cool? Like, but that, I mean, I think I heard you say a little bit ago, Ryan, that you thought Lemur's like really insecure, which I think is really interesting. And like, that's like a huge part is like, he's like looking for Silk's approval, this like ultra powerful dude is like so hung up and so falsely confident, I would say. Like he projects this extreme confidence, but you could tell just like so many jockish people or people kind of like that. Like I've met people like that. They're like project so much confidence, but it's so scarily thin underneath, like
they're like, acknowledge me. Like,
Yeah, you can't tell people that you're tough. Other people just have to recognize that you're tough. If you have to go around telling people that you're tough, you're
not
clearly not tough.
Yeah.
yeah.
I really liked it reading this in like the culture that we're in now, where like superheroes are such a big deal, where like it really seems like Wolfe is making a very like mean parody of not just like superhero mythos, but like sci-fi authors that are really enamored with. I feel like he's doing a little self-criticism, I think, too, where he's giving us this like juicy, hard sci-fi, which is like the effect is so petty. Like he's giving like a great explanation of how these muscles ripple so that a thing comes down his sleeve. And like standing in this book that's about like the outside of the world and the breaking down of the sun. And it's like this super powerful guy is like so into the fact he can move a gun without like moving his arm. Like that's the that's the great big thing his like all powerful resources are going to, is these like little dinky tricks that would maybe be super cool to a little kid watching an action movie. And like maybe a really dorky sci-fi fan would be like lapping up this explanation of how the lights really work. But that it's so petty that like it's kind of just pathetic.
It's interesting how this book has a cyberpunk element going on in it, and all of the characters don't care and are trying to be in the Crusades.
Yeah, this is kind of a cyberpunk book. This is a Gnostic
totally.
cyberpunk. Other things too.
Gnostic cyberpunk.
It is cyberpunk. I mean, with the glass. I mean, it's its own cyberpunk, right? But it is like people interfacing with computers.
It's directly thematically cyberpunk. It's about downloading your consciousness onto the internet.
It's also about rebelling against the overbearing authority.
Yeah, it's about an authority, an authority that doesn't, deserve their authority controlling each and every move, right?
Yeah.
Like
in a world that's visibly falling apart.
But I think that whether this is projected by the author within the story or not, the innocence of Silk is kind of, you don't see that in cyberpunk character. Like, it's interesting. Like cyberpunk is constantly like people who want power are corrupt. All power is corrupting. And the thing about this book, the next step is them trying to, however successfully, say, but if you have an innocent fool who gets the power and doesn't really want it or seek it, he just receives it and then passes it on, because that's what powerful people are supposed to do with their power in order to multiply it. Like, maybe that would work out. And it's interesting because I think that ultimately it clearly doesn't at all. You know, and I think like Silk doesn't become the leader of the town and the town becomes prosperous and successful because the only way that the people were able to be like, no, this guy, we want this guy to lead, is that the world's end.
And it was said earlier, but like this is very subversive on Gene Wolfe's part, like in the context of a sci-fi novel. Everything you just related, Connor, is just like, it's almost like an anti-sci-fi. And one of the reasons why Gene Wolfe stuff just probably hasn't caught on much in general is because you don't have like some like badass character like Case from Neuromancer, who isn't that badass, I guess. But you don't have like those kind of like archetypes played out. Like Silk arguably is not a very compelling character, or compelling protagonist for a story that's not a comedy written in the last like 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think like Wolfe's intentions are like subversive. Like he's creating something new in sci-fi, unique.
Also, he's requiring you to like do some work.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't just read it one time, or like nobody wants that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's so many archetypes written throughout this book because Wolfe actively resists easy archetypes.
I think that he probably has like in his mind, if not on a piece of paper, a list of tropes that he wants like to just turn on their head. And like it feels at times like things are maybe introduced because, all right, here is a place where I can invoke something that's very like trite within science fiction, and I can use it to my own ends, which are like you have to do with things that are not, that are like you're saying, like alien to the average sci-fi book. And there's something I feel like really satisfying about both writing and reading a trope that has been like put to a new use. There's something like, I feel like as much as the experience of the lupine looping of like going back and having a new perspective on something, another thing I think that is like uniquely Wolfe is to see an archetype like go a whole different direction, do different work.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
here's something
And,
that I just realized. Counselor Pato in all of this is the leader of Spectre
Blofeld.
in the Bond movies, and Silk is Bond, right? Like, and I'm thinking about the current, the
idiot Bond.
the latest in. Well, he's a James Bond that doesn't know he's James. He is
Johnny
James
English.
Bond. He's a spy in this and everything like that. He just kind of doesn't know what that is.
He's the man who knew too little.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. He's just bumbling through. He's like that first James Bond movie where there were 7 James Bond, and one of them was Woody Allen. One of them was Peter Sellers and stuff like that.
Right.
I missed that.
There's like the first Casino Royale, right?
It was a farce. It was making fun of it because James Bond is horrible. He's a horrible person.
Yeah. And you
Right.
think that, like,
Why he's a
you know,
popular
when
character.
Roald Dahl was writing it, you've got to imagine that this is intentional in a way that was like kind of verhoeven under the radar.
Mhm.
You know, like, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine Roald Dahl writing the dialogue of like, how come Russian women taste different than Chinese women? Oh, I love them all. Like that kind of stuff. Like Roald Dahl's not writing that seriously.
Right.
And there's like I wonder when did the Flashman books come out? They might be after.
Which ones?
Flashman, you know about Harry Flashman?
Yeah.
Really neat series of British books that are about it's really strange. So this guy, the writer, took a minor character from a book for children or like young adults that was really popular in England. And then he made this minor character who's like kind of a bully and a coward for like one scene in some super popular children's book. He decides to tell the rest of this guy's life over a series of like 15 novels. And the guy's a war hero and who like happens to be kind of involved in every major war situation from.
Oh, Colonel Blimp?
No. Flashman's different because he's a coward and like a liar and deceitful, and he happens to just be in all these historical situations, and then like the fact that he's such a scoundrel ends up causing all of like the worst things in the history of modern warfare. But it's a guy who's like a British Army. I mean, he's like 100 years before James Bond in the setting, but it's like an intentional guy who's like a war hero that's actually really a terrible person on purpose. And I don't know. I feel like I gotta check the timing. I think maybe Flashman was after James Bond when it was written, but again, Roald Dahl. I feel like James Bond started more as perhaps a joke that just became the third most popular film franchise in the world.
Yeah.
Behind only Star Wars and the Marvel stuff.
Really?
Yeah, James Bond's
Really?
number 3. That's pretty interesting. I guess there's a lot of them.
Not Fast and the Furious? That's interesting.
Yeah, come on. Fast and the Furious has got to be on that list.
Yeah, but it's not higher than 3.
I mean, it's done a lot, but it's a short period of time. I mean, James Bond
You're right.
Well, that's true.
is
It's long
the
run.
longest of all of those. You
You're
know?
very right. You're
We've
young.
had since what?
It
60
just won't
years now?
die. And that's why James Bond becomes the ultimate world-ending entity in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He just won't die.
That's
And
really cool.
He's also like the first really popular cop hero, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Really?
like government spook hero. I guess there's cops before him, but he's like the super cop, takes it up to
Yeah.
the level of international
like-
cop.
Yeah, detectives before that are usually independent of the cops, right? I
Oh,
mean,
like
Sherlock Holmes
PI.
kind of works with the cops, but
Well, so
Yeah.
one of the
Jail
things
Cooper
that's explored in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is this idea that originally the adventure hero is an aristocrat who, because they have time on their hands, is able to pursue mystery for the love of the game, you know, which is a particularly British kind of thing. But then as the aristocracy goes away, the action hero becomes an agent of the state.
Mhm.
and there's kind of a loss of honor because of that. You know, that they're doing it for money instead of just because that's what we do, by George. You know, like,
I don't watch Marvel movies. Do they have government affiliations?
Yes.
Like, yeah. So they're like,
and often in very problematic ways. For instance, Black Panther, that movie, which is regarded as a triumph for the African American community, I mean, noticeably has a name similar to a subversive African American group. Black Panther ends up working with the CIA the whole time. And that's kind of weird.
They made one of the most adorable working actors in the game, the CIA agent, right? It's Martin Freeman. They made Bilbo, the representative of the CIA. Like that. I mean, I feel like somebody at the CIA had a little bit of a hand in that.
Oh, no, yeah, exactly. The military underwrites all of the Marvel movies. Because then, like, they can determine how the Air Force is depicted in Captain Marvel and stuff like that.
You can have S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, there's a whole, like, the genesis of the Marvel cinematic universe is S.H.I.E.L.D., a government organization that
is
works,
clearly modeled
a
after Homeland
clandestine
Security
government
now.
organization.
It's interesting. I was just thinking about that because I know growing up in the 80s and 90s, heroes were very often cops or FBI agents or whatever, CIA or whatever. You know, like that was really, really super common. And I was kind of thinking as we were talking about it, is that still the case? You know, and I don't really know.
There's been a shift.
Like maybe it is, at least in Marvel.
But there's been a shift in the tenor of that, where in the 90s, it was like Mulder, who's in the FBI, but the FBI is the bad guy, and Mulder's going to figure out how. And now it's just like, if we look at a more recent incarnation of the same show in Fringe, it's that the organization is the good guys that are protecting everybody from an existential threat. Which I recently watched a YouTube video that was like, this is what's happening, is that all of these cops, we have all these cop shows where cops are protecting us from Satan or things like that are happening right now, because we have this existential threat of global warming that is causing all these refugees to come to our country, and we're throwing cops at them, whipping them on horseback to get rid of them, because we've seen on TV that cops can stop existential threats.
Yeah. Interesting.
This is one of the reasons I really don't like Dale Cooper, the character, even though like I remember people like loved him. That he's just a dork, and why in The Return I was so happy that he didn't come back until the very, very end. And he just like drove a car really fast. Like that's kind of and then for like 2 whole episodes he doesn't talk at all. It's like I was like, oh, thank. Because we don't want it anymore, you know?
Do you think that Lynch like had a personal like feeling of like, I don't want to lionize?
No, I don't think it had anything. No, because there's still other FBI characters who are portrayed like, we're the FBI and we're good at being in the FBI. I think he just was trying to not do fan service shit. I think he just I think he was just fucking with people. He didn't want to do it. You see a lot of parts where he makes like really uninteresting references that they just kind of fall flat to the original, and I think he's doing it on purpose because he didn't want to do the Twin Peaks Return where it's like, and look at all your cool friends and Nadine is doing flips with the high school kids and all this stupid crap that we all have seen already. He's David Lynch, so he's not gonna be like, okay, the continuing stories of Dale Cooper, he's gonna be David Lynch and be insane and amazing.
Was there some aspect of the Dougie arc with like Naomi Watts and Sonny Jim and stuff that was Lynch, like, is some of that him saying that like pursuing a normal life is really stupid?
No, because at the end, I think he's saying, I think it's that's seen as the thing to do, is to just be like a chill person who has a life with a kid and a wife that because in the end, he makes another doppelganger and sends him back to live with the family. But there's a theory online that I don't subscribe to, but I like a lot, that he sends his doppelganger to do the end stuff the last 2 episodes, and Dale Cooper himself goes back to live with Naomi Watts. But that scene is like really nice, and everything that happens with them is very nice and good. And it's like it's the life that you would have wanted for Laura Palmer. You know what I mean? It's just like family life.
Oh, we got a bunch of Johan in the chat.
Oh shit!
Hi, Johan.
All right, here we'll do some quick updates. Let's see. He said he agrees. He thought the book was cyberpunk when he started it. Auk is a street samurai, big crime lord plot line. He says Silk is more badass than Case, which I guess kind of. He said Case being a physically worthless and clearly pathetic cyber hacker was also pretty subversive to sci-fi.
I get what he's saying, because
well, but it's subversive by saying like this character is you guys.
Johan doesn't think Silk is as foolish as we think he is.
Oh well.
Case could be made, but I don't know if we know that.
I mean, when I say fool, I'm talking about in like the tarot archetype, not just like a Slobobian.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Silk is autistic. Like he's not unintelligent, but his mind is elsewhere in its own way. It kind of plays by its own rules, which means he misses a lot of other stuff.
Well, he's a faith-based character. He's taken that step off that cliff, even though he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Only from the lion's
a lot of times
mouth.
Fools are just kind of above it all. Fools are just like their concerns are larger, and so they often are seen, stumbling about through the regular stuff of life. And I think Silk is kind of like stumbling his way through this adventure, just feeling it out. And he's a fool in that sense.
Yeah, and there's a virtue to that. I mean, at least, especially if we're talking about tarot. I mean, the fool starts it off. You gotta, he's, whatever.
And
the base level.
Is the fool in the tarot, Connor, or anybody like the fool's like looking up at the sky, right?
He's looking ahead.
He's looking ahead.
And he's about to walk off a cliff, right?
Yeah. And a little dog is at his feet yapping at him.
I kind of picture him like looking towards the clouds, but I don't know if that's true. But that's kind of like Silkish in a way.
Horizon,
Okay.
His eyes are on the plot.
Paying attention to his next step. He's just
it's way further down.
He just knows that he has to save the Mantian. He doesn't know how he's going to do it, and if he's got to climb this wall right now and maybe chop up a crime lord with a hatchet, he'll have to just try to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, he's constantly just stepping in it. Like whatever happens to him, it's because he's just going.
Mm-hmm.
He's perpetually falling off a cliff in this book.
Yeah, but he knows that he has to do this, even if it means that he's going to fail because God told him to.
Speaking of God, I mean, Lemur really tries to, Crane really tries to test Silk here, right? Like that seems to be like central to what's happening in this chapter to me, is that they're trying to penetrate that armor of faith. And,
and Crane ends up, I mean, they both end up looking foolish in the Slobobian sense.
Sure. Well, because don't we play out the classic Satan saying like, "Oh, this could be yours, Jesus. Just say you with me."
I think
Jesus being like, "It's mine already." What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And the beginning of this chapter 12, where Crane is sort of like doing his little mystery science theater in on the long prayer, I feel like is a very clear message about faith, in that like, from Crane's perspective, like Silk is basically talking gibberish. He's like asking deities that aren't there how he's offended them. And yet like, because this thought process starts in Silk, he's able to like evaluate his own feelings and think about his next actions in a way that's like very orderly. And so it kind of comes back around to like Crane's like, well, all this is like all based on stuff that's not real. But if it has a better outcome, then like if Silk is more prepared to meet the next situation than Crane is, then like what is Crane criticizing? You know, like, and I feel like this is just an argument about prayer. That like you can say that prayer is dumb for whatever many amount of reasons, but if it has any kind of positive effect on a person, then like what does it matter what you're, you know, like Penn and Tellering it into oblivion?
Well,
what have you
I feel like Crane comes to that
like
conclusion.
It's the same thing as the whole like general like atheist argument anyway, where you're just like, why is this even an argument? Like, what's the point of being like a hardline atheist? It just seems like a little silly.
Yeah, it's
just like so. It just feels real. It always feels really silly to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
but Crane
and I feel like it's the same
this.
thing. It's just like, why does, like, you're really invested in this particular thing being true.
But in the end, that's part of why Silk has so much, like, and Crane recognizes. So Crane's like, you are perfect. You like, I thought that we would be able to make you appear to be this particular thing that we need you to be, but you just actually are that. So
and better.
I guess instead of manipulating you, I'm helping you.
Yeah, but I think I don't think Crane ever like has a realization that he has ever, like, I don't think Crane ever finds himself to have been wrong or
right, but he can recognize the value of what Silk is, even though he isn't it, and he can't be.
Yeah, I mean, he recognizes the value for the plan that he already had.
Right.
Revelation.
But value, you know, like there is value to it, and he can recognize that in his own way because it's undeniable. You know, like there is. I'm saying that there is a value to it, and Crane is just, even as he's struggling against it, he's able to come to like, oh no, this just kind of works, and I'm going to go with it.
Yeah.
And then he dies.
Yeah.
Poor Crane.
Yeah.
Crane like really focuses on physical things and rules. Like he's asking, like, aren't you supposed to do it this way? Aren't you supposed to, like, hey, aren't you breaking your own rules? Like Crane's looking to trip up Silk. He focuses on the beads. He's got like all of this. He is like, I feel like very much in this moment, like Wolfe is filling out all the archetypes of the materialist.
The classical atheist. Like, yeah. It's like a cartoon.
Well, yeah, because atheists are oftentimes kind of like have this like wry sense of humor too, you know, like, oh sure, like, yeah, pray to God, like, okay, whatever floats your boat there.
And it's all about it's always about trying to like catch someone in like a fallacy or whatever. It's like a very like intellectual. I mean, I was actually just like totally fascinated yesterday about this thread on Nextdoor where this person was just like arguing that there isn't a God with all these like, people on fucking Nextdoor.
Their neighbors.
Like amazing to read.
That sounds awesome.
And I was just like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's just like, I don't know. You just don't see it I don't see it that often. Just like the hard line atheist, like being real sarcastic and like real cynical and like just trying to kind of like do these like technical arguments on people who are like believers. And you're just like, what? This is not gonna work. Like you're both, it's just like this hilarious dance. It's just funny that anyone does that. That anyone either side, like that anyone's like engaging that. It's like,
I feel like it becomes this circle of like, and that doesn't make any sense. And the person's like, and that's why that's a miracle.
Exactly.
But that doesn't make any sense.
It's
that's
just
miraculous.
Like, they just can't. Like it's so funny.
Yeah.
I love it.
Proving that things don't make sense is feel like it also kind of explains the need for religion, like why people need it, because you'll never be able to make everything make sense. Like,
It's awesome. It's so
it's the
awesome.
problem with science is that it's really easy to forget. Like science is understanding so much, so it's easy to forget that there's also so much more that we haven't. I love this YouTube video that talks about how most numbers we haven't thought of yet. I don't know how to think of what that means, but it's true. Most numbers we haven't thought of yet. Most numbers we don't know what they would be. We have no use for them. But what the hell does that mean? But it's also true.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're just not quite developed in that way yet, but it would probably have to do with groupings and movements of quantities, right? Like,
well, set theory is able to point us in the direction. Like, we know that there's a kind of number that exists where it's an infinite, it has an infinite number of digits, and therefore every combination of digits can be found somewhere in the number. So you can find the digits that represent your name, you can find your phone number, your social security number, like every number would be represented in this number. And like, because we have conceived of that kind of number, we can construct what that number would be. But we've never encountered one of those numbers naturally that we know of, because we also have no way of testing whether a number is that kind of number. And the thing about all of this is we don't know, although we know that this exists, we don't know why it would exist, what it means, or how we could use that in any way. And then you encounter this thing of how much science has been discovered that has been like that, where it's like, I found out this thing, I don't know what to do with it, so we forget it. And how many times we've circled back around and found like, oh, I wrote this weird thing on a scrap of paper. It turns out it's everything we need to know right now. It's just been sitting around for 80 years because nobody knew what the hell it was, but now it's everything. Knowledge is a tricky thing, Joe Rogan once said on the show News Radio.
Joe Rogan is being perhaps the working class intellectual thing we were looking for earlier.
yeah.
I mean, Joe Rogan is a crazy phenomenon of what's going on right now.
He's not an intellectual, but he provides a space for a variety of intellectuals, I would say.
He provides a space for conversation. Like they talk about stuff, which is something. I'm not, like they talk about things,
He's
and
insane.
a lot of people tune in and listen.
But
He's got this
his
crazy
show is
thing.
Interesting.
He's got this crazy thing where he's so visibly maligned, like the forward facing part of our culture is like, Joe Rogan is clearly bad. And yet he's so popular. Like he invented podcasts basically and has the most popular one and is making fantastic amounts of money off of it. So like,
and seeming to have a really good time.
Even though he's circling the canceling drain constantly, he never goes in it. He's in he's a moon of cancellation, just constantly orbiting.
Worst thing you can do if you are being canceled and you don't want to be canceled, the worst thing you can do is respond to the cancellation.
Right.
Joe Rogan's just like, oh, people are trying to cancel me. I have like $1 billion. Who gives a fuck, right? And then people.
Well, he also has the luxury of being like, people have criticized me for saying this, so I've had the people who criticize me on, and I'm going to talk to them about it.
Yeah.
And it's an open conversation, and we get stoned together, so we kind of work things out. And then they like being on my show because it's fun. I got them stoned, and they come back, and now they're in my orbit too. They're part of my moon.
That's what. Yes, you just
Right.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
You gotta wonder how many. There are these weird places where we start to see exactly how many people there are in America, which you don't get that impression until you kind of fall into weird subcultures. And Rogan's just an easy one to stumble upon because it's so big. But it really if you stare too long at it, it starts to make you think how thin is the narrative about what most people are like. That
Yeah.
like that all of TV's like all of the narrative of the news is kind of predicated on sort of this ideal American who's educated and tasteful and has like a acceptable sphere of interests and doesn't ask stonery questions. Like that person is, there's so few of them actual out there.
Mm-hmm. Anyway,
I didn't know you wore glasses.
Yeah, I marked
Did we know that Silk wore glasses? Was that ever mentioned before?
oh yeah, he's talking about his glasses through the whole thing. He's like, oh, I lost my glasses. I have this glasses case. It's very special. Oh, where did my glasses case go? I left it behind.
I remember the pen case, and I remember him talking about losing his glasses after he
Maybe
comes
I'm
out of the water.
conflating the two. Maybe
I don't know. Yeah,
I think you're conflating them, but it's like the glasses are for reading or something. When does he?
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't.
He mentions them in the. I don't know. It's
feel
one
like
of those
they're kind of a
things that we
marker.
wouldn't think to care about necessarily when you're reading a book, you know.
There's so much to keep track of that it's like I wasn't keeping track of whether or not Silk wore glasses. I definitely didn't picture him wearing glasses.
Yeah, neither.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think that in this book he really ends up wearing glasses ever.
No, but he has them on him. Maybe he wasn't wearing them, but he was carrying them.
Yeah.
I feel like there's this thing that Wolfe does with like props like that, where they're always just like funny little clues. And I feel like the glasses thing gets kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to think that it's like a setup for Short Sun, but it's like relevant in Short Sun kind of that Silk wears glasses. But I just think usually when it's like a prop thing like that, like the glasses or like the cane or like stuff, the pen case, or the beads, I feel like the object, the hatchet, I feel like the props are kind of like weird little, I don't know,
Characters.
Like little funny clues.
Yes.
I think they're always in there on purpose, and it's like, but they're just like these funny little things. I don't know. I'm not being very eloquent right now.
No. Yeah,
tired.
they're like little threads throughout the narrative that Wolfe like touches back on sometimes. Like, oh, now Silk has to slap the thing on the wall to wrap around his leg. Now Silk has his cane. Yeah. Now Silk has this little thing. I'm not exactly sure they have like a kind of thematic relevance. I don't know. I mean, I'm just not thinking about that now, but they definitely are threaded throughout the narrative as kind of like things for the characters to do as they're talking to one another.
And also weirdly, like, it's funny. I'm just having this thing where in thinking about like the little props like that, it's like they weirdly, to me, now that I'm thinking about them, it's like they are really tying the three books together for me. Like between Severian and Silk and Horn, there's like the cane thing. I don't know. There's like these prop things that are like that, just like the three main characters always have, and they are like they tie the three. To me, it's like when I'm thinking about them now.
Yeah.
The little props really like tie the protagonists like together into it.
They have a lot of the same injuries, right? And like they all have swords. Like there's little echoes. There's so many echoes between Horn and Severian, especially, that I'm not going to talk about. But reading the first book of Short Sun, especially, I was like, Horn and Severian fucking have like almost all the same things happen to each other.
The stigmata of these characters is almost identical to the stigmata of the Sacred King described by Robert Graves.
Cool.
Which is one of my points of how like this book is influenced by Robert Graves. I don't care if you didn't like White Goddess.
That's so cool.
Is the Sacred King like the Fisher King?
I mean, that's part of the larger mythemeplex that kind of is developed throughout the Mediterranean all through classical history, you know. The Wounded King. This is all based on a obscure gospel that's thrown out where a little bit before the crucifixion, Jesus goes off and is lamed ritually, and that's where he like officially becomes both high priest and king of the Jews, which he in this reading is genetically inheritor of both of those lines. What is it, David and Levi? I apologize if I'm not getting all my Jewish mythology and history correct. And then like the same thing happens to Achilles and Dionysus, and like he just finds all of these mythological characters that are lamed in the same way. And then so is Severian and Silk and Horn and Latro from the Soldiers books. Like Gene Wolfe plays to this archetype that Graves identified, or they all just happen to be working from the same culture, I guess.
Well, that's cool. But yeah, they do all have like little talisman objects that are very important to them that get mentioned over and over and over again, very specifically. It is.
I just think it's funny because they're like the little detailed things, but I think to me, like, there's something about the little detailed things more than anything else that like really binds those protagonists into a unit.
It's also a gateway into their subconscious personality, their unrecognized personality. And in this way, what we're talking about right now, this kind of characterization makes me feel like Gene Wolfe's writing is like acting. Like where if it was Commedia dell'arte, these things would be called lazzi, and it'd be just the jokes that character does when nothing's going on to establish that I am that character. Or business, it would be called in like show business kind of stuff of like my character, I got this pen. Tarantino has something about like, you know, my character has this pen and he does this thing with this pen. It's not in the script. It's just an acting choice that I made because it's how I'm bringing this guy's personality out. You know, it's his unconscious tick that shows that he's, and he has a whole personality based around that. And I feel like that's what Gene Wolfe is doing in those moments, is like opening up these people's souls with their ticks.
I mean, I think that's totally true. The things like with the drawing the circle on the cheek is like a thing that just like goes. And also part of that too is like, how do you identify these characters in a universe that he's created where almost no character is like only one character? Like everybody's got like other personalities in their mind, and like people are being like possessed, people are like drinking the Alzabo, like people, you know, whatever happens in Short Sun, which we won't talk about, like you know, so it's like these things where you can like toggle between characters too, like within one person.
Yeah, exactly. You can see
like,
when they're being
like
one person or the other.
Little bits that come out, like when Severian will say something and you're like, well, that's Thecla. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, sometimes it's the little stuff that is the most revealing.
Totally.
And the thing is, we can take this and use it to recognize things about ourselves. Like we start to notice the business that represents when we're being the us that's by ourselves, or when we're being the us that's performing for other people, and who we're performing for by which business. Or the us that hangs out with
one group of people, or the us that hangs out with another group of people.
Exactly. We can, if we pay attention to our business and what mode, it reveals what mode we're operating in, and that can become a useful thing. And then you start to recognize that, oh, I'm not one person, I'm 50 people. And then you can start to recognize like, oh, this person isn't just them. Like what I'm seeing of them is also part of them. And so when I'm seeing them, I'm having an effect on them just by the scene. I might have wandered far afield there.
I don't think so.
Okay.
You said
I
a
think it's
lot.
relevant to the book.
Yeah.
Anything about the slipperiness of identity, I think, is pretty relevant to this book. These books.
Yeah. That's kind of where, you know, you maybe a minute ago, Connor, you said something about how we like have different all the different ways that, you know, our identities exist, you know, general. I don't know. I'm not quoting you, I'm just saying generally. And then my mind just kind of like took that, and then I was just kind of like thinking about that particular thing while you continued to talk. And then I was like, oh wait, but I'm still processing like something from a second ago.
I apologize.
I mean, that's just the way that's how we do, you know?
I suppose it is.
We got to keep up here. Good stuff. I mean, what I was thinking, and this is just Tim's thoughts responding to Connor's thoughts and Jen's and everyone else's, is just like, then I was like, you know, we really do act in different ways in different situations with ourselves, with others, with different groups, as Jen pointed out. And like, and then I was thinking, like, is that a good thing? Or is that like a natural way to be? Or is that just sort of like a coping thing that humans are capable of, but that is like perhaps like stressful or a causer of anxiety? And
I think it's a necessity, but I think you're onto something that it might cause anxiety and stress.
I full disclosure, a large part of my work right now is trying to argue that is built into the nature of reality, and that is how quarks become physical matter. It's how consciousness arises out of physical matter, and it's how society arises out of consciousnesses. I think that this exact process is a negentropic process of order arising out of chaos that just kind of is happening, and you can figure out how to ride it, or you can drown in it.
That's interesting. I mean, I'm not exactly responding to what you just said, but I always think of people as being very plastic and responsive to their natures and environments. Is kind of like a philosophy of mine, is that is more influential on individuals, is like your surroundings and the people around you, and than the individual themselves, is vice versa, if that makes sense. And that's just my own kind of philosophy that others have, certainly, but just like something that I've internalized and believed more and more over the years. And like thinking about how what identity is within that you know, kind of understanding of or philosophy of the world, you know, is like it might compromise one's sanity or feelings of safety to constantly be in different environments, and to, like, in a practical way, you know, like to go back to the work conversation, like when I go to work, I'm often interacting with other people who have a different fixed set of beliefs or different worldviews than myself. And it's good to converse with people like that in a way. But when there are power structures involved, then you also become like subservient to those kind of mindsets in a way too, right? It's like, yep, good old capitalism is working as usual. All right, yeah, high five, like hooray. And just as like, and maybe just a quick example that like I think might kind of be bad. I think like ultimately like people throughout most of history might have been in less situations where they are what do you call it in school now? There's actually a word for it that in charter schools, I think it's code switching, where you're actually modifying your personality based on the people that you're around in order to interact with them better.
Yeah.
It just might be kind of a new phenomenon for people, you know.
I think that it's about 10,000 years old and started when we began agriculture, which gave us the concept of ownership.
Yeah, but were people doing it as much? You know, like was it?
Oh, no,
like
it certainly evolved.
I don't
Right.
think people. I think we think about it a lot because we live in a super individualized society, and that is like agriculture and farm work, I suppose, is like the beginning, but also the beginnings of the individualized society. But like we're obsessed with ourselves, and I don't think people. I think this is like it's an example of I mean, maybe it's a lot of like marketing and advertising, but just like I think it's a symptom of our world that we're so obsessed with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, I'm saying that began 10,000 years ago,
okay.
but it's gotten to this ridiculous point now,
I think
which is
the
a different
switching
thing.
and the being a different person in different places, I kind of think that was like an understood that I want to say that's what manners are. Like that's what etiquette is. That's what hierarchy is basically just acting like a specific person in a specific situation.
Yeah. I mean, in schools now they teach. Yeah, it was like just to go back to this little idea I brought up. Like this idea of code switching, if you've never heard it, is something that's taught to African American or Black children in schools now, where when you're in certain kind of business situations, you're not going to talk the same way that you talk at your home, because that's
interesting. That's like,
I mean,
that's like a social science thing, but it's interesting that they're turning that's now like, because it's a word to describe a phenomena. So it's interesting to be like, oh, we're going to teach this as a skill. Like, it's true, it is a skill. And
it's something that people kind of normally do. And Connor, you're going back to agriculture. I was thinking more like mercantile, kind of like, or like when, like with the proliferation of like salesmanship, and also like like class hierarchies like that. I mean, which I kind of in my brain like picture kind of happening and influencing humanity as a whole, like kind of this at similar times is like. That's when these sort of ideas of like, oh, like you become different people based on different situations kind of became more and more. And I'm just curious, like, you know, now I don't have an answer if that's like more so now than ever.
I think that you're right, that there was a huge shift that occurred in the concept of identity around the rise of mercantilism and capitalism at all, where like there was more possibility to be an individual. Like it gave us the idea of upward mobility and stuff like that, and like started like making us think that maybe we didn't have to adhere to these class structures, which created a different class structure. But like, yeah, prior to that, like, and you can see it in weird ways of like the concept of genius, which right now we think is a person who has great ideas, but originally was a spirit that possessed you. Like art didn't belong to the artist. It was the muse that came and worked through the art. You were a conduit. Like ideas came from a divine place. And then, yeah, I think you're exactly correct that mercantilism made it so like, oh no, those ideas are mine because now they're capital and I can sell them. And that exactly is what kills God in a way. Like if ideas aren't coming from God, they're coming from me, then I'm better than God.
Yeah.
And I guess that God thing doesn't exist because the ideas, like it was the thing that ideas come from. And if ideas are coming from me, then what the hell?
This is the issue I feel like that Kanye is facing.
Sure.
He knows there's something divine that's bigger than him, but he also knows that he is a special man and that things come from him that are his. And so like I feel like he's got to expand on each end to keep balancing so that he can have both. and still he's got like, you know, a stadium full of people driving in circles. Attempt to like spin these two plates that they keep getting bigger and bigger so he can fit more God and Kanye on them. I think, Tim, what you're talking about with business, I think it's significant that Mercury reigns over business and deceit. That you get the same fast little God brings both those things. He brings contracts and lies, like at the same time.
The sea is bigger now than ever. I don't mean big, large, but I mean part of business now more than ever. I mean, everything travels overseas, right? All the things in your home, all the objects and the doodads and gadgets delivered on a boat. All traveled over water.
Speaking of water, I think that there's, it's really interesting that this whole concept of the submarine, the secret submarine where there's a prison and people are tortured, is weirdly prescient because we have one of those. It's an aircraft carrier, not a submarine. But I wonder if this was something that came from Wolfe imagining, or if there was some sort of weird military engineering like background kind of access he had to the idea of the boat in international waters where people are tortured. I mean, this concept came to me and or he like became a thing that I knew about in the years following 9/11 when I started getting really into Gitmo and researching about extraordinary rendition and stuff, and finding out that it was like pretty easy to get information, and a couple of books were written on the fact that nobody in Gitmo was really suspected of, they didn't think anybody in Gitmo really did anything. And that anyone who maybe did do something was in the belly of this aircraft carrier called the Diego Garcia, which was parked in the Chagos Atoll in an archipelago near Mauritania. And reading this part now again, I reminded, this was something I put a little bit about it and I dropped some stuff about it in Deactivated, because I think it's like one of the more insane threads of our time. Like this archipelago was seized by Britain when they didn't really need it anymore. The United States took it and tested A-bombs there. And they had to sweep all the people that lived on these islands off so they could drop some nuclear bombs. And then it's just kind of been this like no man's land for a while. And then I guess people kind of came back after atomic debris went away. And I saw in the news, they're in the news now because Mauritania, which is like the closest island nation to it, is starting to say like, yo, we're taking this. There's no reason for this to be British or American. And they just recently passed a law that British stamps, you can't send anything out of the area with a British stamping. And so there's like a weird power struggle that Britain seems completely destined to lose because it's not really worth anything. But it's going to mean that people are like asserting their sovereignty in a way. It's like, you know, against the rules. But anyway, this all goes back to, we have an aircraft carrier still sitting there, and who knows how many people are on there, because the idea is no laws can possibly apply to them if they're on this aircraft carrier in this weird archipelago, which doesn't kind of belong to anybody. Maybe it's British, maybe it's ours.
It's so bizarre that's how like things work, is that even though you're working in the interest and explicitly hired and paid for by the US government or the British government or whoever, like as long as you're just not on their territory, like, you know, you could act without law. Like what? Like,
you know, you can torture and be safe from any kind of possibility of them needing to give the people there a trial, although nobody in Gitmo got a trial either. So,
yeah, it's the law of the land.
Yeah.
Another weird foreshadowing of real life that I felt in this chapter was when Crane or when Lemur says like, "Oh man, if I wish we could have invented you. You're perfect." I feel like that is like such a Democrat Republican thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, oh man, you know, if the Republicans could have invented Obama, they would have been geniuses because it gave them all the, you know, like fired up their base. And then if the Democrats could have, exactly. If the Democrats could have invented Trump, it was like, oh, you're better than our wildest dreams. I mean, they're like still trying to bring that back.
Absolutely. Well, with those two parties, the point isn't the parties. The point, what they're hired by our business overlords and corporate overlords to do is to compete with one another back and forth.
Exactly.
And so Obama and Trump are like,
Super Bowl.
Well, what to compete?
You know, like compete like football teams.
Do like the theater of there's any fucking difference to any of this. You know, there's this is a little bit separate, but actually a lot separate, but I just remembered that there's something in this chapter that really excites me because very specifically feels like a hardcore awesome Wolfian concept that's just thrown out there, and it's something that we understand already, but it's never been like explicitly stated by a character yet. And that's when Lemur is describing like the how the god system came to be in the world. And he's saying like, okay, like they're doing surgery on people, but they found that even though they erased the memories, the God memories were still there. So that's kind of why we invented the gods. So I suppose those people wouldn't be disoriented or whatever, like there were still gods around. And the reason why I think that's so cool and Wolfian is because, again, like Wolfe is always having these kind of like hard ideas about how these sort of like big concepts come about, right? Like religions. And that got me thinking, well, okay, so if this is like vaguely analogous to a system of gods like you know, the Greek or the Roman gods or something like that, I mean, Wolfe, in a way, could be saying that those gods were based on actual human archetypes from the pasts of those citizens, right? And perhaps people forgot about those human rulers over, you know, a couple of generations or whatever, but the impressions were still there. And then like this sort of god system was able to like get plugged in based on humans. You know, like that's like the origin of religious characters, if you will, like, you know, like because that gets you thinking, well, where did the gods come from? Stories, like a writer just sat around and was like, I got some cool ideas. Like, I don't think it was really like that.
No, the gods are patterns. The gods aren't like, euhemerism is really interesting because I feel like it still doesn't answer the question of why do they take the forms they take? Like they might, like biographical elements could direct certain details, but like the things that are salient aren't like, oh, there was once this one guy. The things that are salient are patterns that recur.
Right. May I propose that both of these things happen and we can watch these two phenomena fight in mythology when we see the War in Heaven mytheme happen, where you have these primordial natural gods that are the patterns of, you know, the existential patterns that occur in our environment versus the gods of men who have come and built civilization and they fight, and the gods of men suborn the natural gods, or sometimes they have a little treaty or something like that. But I think that's the two kinds of mythology colliding and becoming the stream of mythology where those two things mingle, and then it becomes whatever happens next, you know. I think that's what that story is mythology meeting itself.
Yeah, because the tendency with euhemerism is to go into Crane world of like rules and material and say, oh, okay, this is just all it is. It's like, oh, Apollo's just a guy who beat the snake priestess. He's just a dude with a spear that beat the snake priestess. But, you know, I think Connor, you are talking a lot of sense when you say like this is an element that influences and is influenced by something that is not like human beings. So it's not historical human beings.
And I mean, and I also think it's significant that the primordial gods are the generation that produces the gods of men, who then have to kill them, which itself, interestingly enough, is a pattern that we find as our families move through time, that the children replace the preceding generation. That is a pattern, which is embodied itself in the Greek deity of Ananke, I believe.
Well, it's
Necessity.
interesting too with like this. What do you call a system with like multiple gods?
Pantheon?
Polytheistic.
And yeah, it's interesting how that tends to be the characters, the gods tend to be kind of human in the stories, right? Like they kind of like they have motivations and like they do stuff and like go visit people and you know what I mean? Like they kind of have like human superhero like qualities. And the interesting thing about like like the Christian Catholic, like one monotheistic God. The interesting thing about it is that it becomes more of like an abstract force, which, like it's not a character. It doesn't have like, it's not like an animal or a combination of animals or some mythic being that you can visualize. In general, it's like something more that seems relevant.
But then when he wants to express his love, it's exactly what he does. He, using the he very loosely, that force, in order to express love, incarnates as a physical dude, which is an interesting, like not a necessarily easy jump to make, I think. I think it's a kind of a unique way to go about the idea of gods, is to say, like, all right, the force is definitely there, back there, but if the force is going to be in our lives, it needs to like make a gesture that we can recognize.
Are you talking about Jesus?
Yeah, that like the New Testament is the necessary fulfillment of the force learning to love us.
Nope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of the outsider is God.
The outsider is like the Jesus that existed before time.
So there's a pattern that in mythology that develops, particularly around the Middle East, coming out of Sumer, but it like sticks around in that area of the Trinity. It's the basis of the Trinity, where you have an immanent, a transcendent, and an abstract God that are all, they stack on top of each other and they're all kind of like God, but then you have the God that's right here and the God that helps me to get to that abstract place, and then the God that is just like the concept. Wait a minute, why was I talking about that? Sorry, everybody.
You're genius.
But,
You're genius possessed.
You're riffing.
Oh. So the whole Jesus thing isn't entirely original. It's just the most successful. And but it's a tried and true tool that has just been used to wild success in this instance.
It's a refinement.
Yeah, this is the huge fight I had when I was hanging out with that ended my relationship with the psycho-Catholics. Was they were like, and no one had ever heard this story before. It's like they heard it since they started telling stories. This is the story. That's why it works. And they're like, go away.
Weird that was the hill they wanted to die on.
I mean, it's just intense. It's because at the heart of things, they're dogmatic. So they're like, no, our story is the real one. Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the atheists who have a point kind of that, I think that's like kind of the area where they point to when they're talking, when, like when they have a valid and legit criticism organized religions, is that like that dogmatism can be a destructive force.
Right, but then atheists also have a dogma because
right. If you're going to call
yourself
like
we believe science, we're based in facts, and that becomes dogmatic. And so then they can't see outside of their own system, and they can't criticize it. The objectivity that they're so enamored of, they're incapable of because they're trapped within their own system of alleged objectivity,
And intolerance of ideas that don't fit the dogma, which is the exact problem supposedly that would lead these people to atheism to begin with.
And then they keep chasing that ultimate fact, the truest true thing. And what do they find? They find that at the bottom of everything, all things are yes and no. They exist and they don't exist. Like quarks are a probability wave where everything is true on it to varying degrees. Sorry, objectively, there is no objectivity.
You can only reach certainty by amputating parts of reality.
Yeah. Everything includes the things that aren't true and don't exist.
Dragons are
as exhibited by J.R.R. Tolkien in the Silmarillion, beautifully.
Okay, I have a question about jetpacks.
Yeah.
Why does Wolfe seem to think that they're like a good idea? Like he's holding up the idea of like if they get the Flyers technology, this is going to be a game changer in war. And I don't totally understand why that would be.
It doesn't seem like that big of a deal. I mean it's just like a kind of a rinky-dink Rocketeer backpack, right?
Yeah,
like
can it be like getting behind enemy lines kind of thing? Because they can't really carry weight, right?
Right.
Like they have to be really light for it to work.
Well, a lot of this book is about restricting population movement.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they're flying back from mainframe, they talk about like they explicitly say like our city is next to a big lake and a desert because it's hard to get across those things. And I bet you every city has some kind of big fucking mountain or an impassable disease-ridden swamp or something like that, because then we can't gang up against God.
When I was a kid, I used to get Mad Magazine from Uncle Bear when he was done with it. When I went to like visit my grandparents, he'd give me all the Mad magazines he was finished reading. And I remember in their parody of The Rocketeer, the movie, there was a character that said like, we can't let this rocket pack technology fall into the Nazis' hands. And then there's another character that's like, why not? It might be easier to shoot down a bunch of people flying low enough to breathe individually than it would be to shoot down giant armored planes that are flying up higher than we can see.
Yeah.
And I need Gene to address the criticism of Mad Magazine.
Yeah, it's a good point. And also, so the Flyers have some plot holes to them, I feel like, so what? They're here they're sun mechanics. They're somehow doing something maintenance-wise to the sun, but like, what are they doing? Like, it involves flying, but they're not like flying into the sun. Like, what are they doing? I guess they're instruments, it's implied at one point. Actually, now okay, they're angels. They're the eyes of God, which is what angels are with their numerals. They're taking measurements.
Didn't somebody say that they're relaying messages, that they like take information from one place to another? I mean, I don't know why mainframe would have physical locations that need different information, but I feel like at some point somebody describes their job as partially about being like going from one end of the sun to the other one, some measurements or whatever.
Well, I don't understand that quite, the necessity or the mechanics of that quite fully yet, unless the measurements are that they're just going out in the field with their instruments to take the measurements, and that's the message.
Yeah.
Rather than like, Herbs wants mainframe to know this.
I mean, I guess it's
Could it be that they're measuring to figure out when it's time for people to leave the world, except that like has kind of been lost or something, even to the Flyers?
Wait, say again?
that they're measuring like weather conditions and etc. to see to like because they're supposed to know when it's time to leave the whirl. But they just don't. It's like that's something that's been lost. Like many of like the real use of cards, etc. over time.
I do guess that we also see them deliver a message from mainframe to Awk.
Yeah, they do. That's true.
Yeah.
I guess there is that.
I mean, I get if the sun is a physical machine, even if it's being run by computers, there's still going to be the necessity to put eyes on the whole thing. Like maybe that's what the angels are doing is like this. The mainframe needs a person to be able to go and look at the sun sometimes because like the computer's not going to know everything that there is to know about. Computers can be oblivious to something that's happening in the physical world, no matter how good they are. And that like, maybe that's part of the flyer's job is like to go put eyes on the sun and make sure it's still doing what it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, then they got to come back and tell mainframe, hey, you have not detected a sun problem.
Yeah. Which I believe they even described doing at one point.
That is my understanding of the flyers from 1.5 reads. That they were definitely angels and had a messenger capacity.
We're in a chapter right now where we talk to a flyer, right?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
Iolar.
Mm-hmm.
Yolar.
But he only says one sort of relevant little snippet of a thing where he's like, we're losing control. I think is what he says.
Yeah.
Of the sun. He mentions the sun.
And then dies exactly like Charlie from Lost. Right?
He
Second
dies
in the
in it.
water, not Penny's boat.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, he does. He
Yeah.
does. Cool.
And
His broken body is dropped.
I know that
into
J.J.
the-
Abrams likes Gene Wolfe.
Really?
Particularly, yeah, in his next show after Lost, Fringe, there's a part where somebody has to go in. He goes into a bookstore where the person who runs the bookstore is an agent that works for him, except that he's in the next universe over. So he has to prove to this guy, like, I'm on the inside with you. So he goes in and says, I'm looking for Lake of the Long Sun. And the guy's like, okay, come in my back room. What are you talking about? Who are you?
Because no one would be looking for that book.
Right. It's like the code word of like, I'm enough of a nerd that you can trust my interdimensional spydom.
Pelagic Argosy set sail. That was the passphrase from the first book.
Yeah, yeah.
J.J. Abrams, I'm probably way overshooting my understanding of the man, but he would really strike me as a person who might have read these books once and was like, trippy.
Well, now actually, let me backtrack what I've said here, because I believe that this happens after J.J. Abrams has left the show, and it's actually Damon Lindelof, who is clearly a better person, who's doing it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's Lindelof who's the Wolf fan.
Okay, yeah. Because Abrams, to me, I feel like is the embodiment of the elevator pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, that's all he is. He's a producer. You know,
Yeah.
he's not
And then
really a storyteller. He's a producer.
He's the children of producers too. Hasn't both of his parents producers? He was produced by producers. He's a production. He's like the most.
I think he's
pure
raising
producer.
a producer as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. I did see that kid is. There's a lot of
Like that kid,
straight up
he
nepotism
talked-
happening right now.
He talked about how like he involved his then like 7-year-old son heavily with Cloverfield. Like it was originally his son's. He's like, I want to make a big monster movie, and JJ's like, okay, kid, let's do it.
That is called grooming.
Yeah, grooming, totally.
Oh, it's fine when J.J. Abrams does it, but when Drake does it, we get all upset. Huh?
When who?
Drake does it. We get
Oh,
upset.
Drake. I didn't hear what you said.
He's the most famous groomer I can think of.
Yeah, for sure.
People are upset about Drake's
Yeah.
kid or something.
No, he's been known to groom in the DMs. He like DMs famous like young stars. It's like, hey, you like Drake? That's me.
But they're like, I think all of the girls are like
dumbasses.
Yeah, well, none of I don't think anyone's been like Drake did this thing. I think people have just observed the fact that he texts certain. They know about it somehow that he texts.
Yeah.
Like Billie Eilish and Millie Bobby Brown. This is like such a silly thing for us to talk about. And I can't believe I know so much about it.
I just want to understand the references.
It's a thing. I feel like it's an interesting thing. Like it's kind of reminds me of like French court, like pre-revolution French court of like courtiers who are out corrupting the youth, you know?
Well, he was a child star on the Degrassi, The Next Generation television program.
Oh, damn, Degrassi. It all comes back to Degrassi.
It really always comes back to Degrassi.
It really does.
So I wonder if
it never
he's just
does.
like, oh, that's you find young up and coming stars, and you just like groom them, of course.
I mean, there is a possibility that all of like Hollywood and celebrity is all a giant grooming network. There are people that believe that, and I feel like it might be more like that than the other way that we're
There's
told.
probably elements of both, you know.
I think that Disney actually played a big hand in pushing the concept of the child star with the Musketeer Club, and I think that, I mean, fucking Shirley Temple aside, but I think that it's irresponsible to allow children to become famous. I think that it's like, it's tantamount to giving a 3-year-old cigarettes, you know, like it's going to ruin
Giving them steroids.
Brainwork.
every day.
I'm watching Only Murders in the Building, starring Selena Gomez, and I note that she has dead soulless eyes, just like her fellow Disney alum Ryan Gosling. All those people are dead inside from working as children with Disney.
The ones who aren't dead are like inside are like Britney and Shia LaBeouf, who
Right.
have clearly have the other end of the problem.
Yeah.
It's not okay. That's I don't want to. There's a part of me that doesn't want to watch any movies that star children.
Yeah.
Because I think it's inhumane.
And I guess another person that's way on that other side is Corey Feldman, who has been like pretty openly, I feel like he's like, kids are getting raped left and right all the time. It's totally normal. And like, no one will believe it because it's so bad that it's like so much worse than anyone would allow themselves to believe.
I mean, it's
I trust him. I don't think he's lying about it. I don't think there's any reason why he should.
It's an inherently hedonistic culture. Like there's no way to get the hedonism fully out of it. And so like, even if you don't have people who are like, I'm going to have sex with this little kid, you have like Drew Barrymore, who at 7 is doing coke in the disco club, you know, like that. It's just gonna be a rape of some sort if you thrust a child into fame. At the very least, it makes it so that they're public game, that like now we're going to talk about them, and like kids talking about kids is an intense thing, as you can tell from their reaction to it in high school.
So I watched The Phantom Menace last night. And I remembered, didn't that kid, Jake Lloyd, that little kid, get like totally like his life ruined by people being mean to him?
Yes,
just, like,
and he speaks out about it, how Star Wars ruined his life.
Yeah. And it's like, what, like, why would you?
I never heard that.
Talking about a child like this.
What happened to him?
I think he ended up in jail for a bit.
Wait.
I don't know about that. I think he lived he just completely got out of show business and tried to never think about Star Wars as much as possible.
Did people like make fun of him because the movie was bad, or?
Well, I mean, like he became the target of so much ire from like older Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
I mean, like kids just thought it was cool that like someone like, I don't know, I was like his age when that movie came out, so I was like, this is awesome, like this is me, this movie.
I was like, this is fine.
But like just the legacy of that movie is so bad that like, you know, people and I think it's kind of getting reevaluated now, which like I feel bad for this guy who's had to grow up hated like is the symptom of like Star Wars being ruined. And now we're kind of getting to the point where it's like, maybe it's not that bad, like whatever.
Hey, it's better than going the other way.
I'm sorry.
I don't get it.
I didn't hear you because
You said better than going the other way?
I mean, it's better than like everyone loved him until he got grown up and then they were like, this movie's fucking horrible.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Rather have the redemption afterwards.
I don't know. Like, if you're an adult,
Phantom Menace?
If you're an adult, you can deal with that, though.
Yeah,
like,
if
you're an adult actor, if people are like, that movie you were in when you were a kid sucked, you'd be like, yeah, I was a kid. Like, who cares?
But now I'm an accountant. Eat shit.
That child did not write that movie.
Right.
He did not create Jar Jar Binks. He didn't
think about how low he was brought. And then that means that now that the movie's redeemed, he can go higher than he would have ever been able to go.
But he won't because he hates it.
Yeah, he's not.
Like, he rejects that now because fuck that shit. It ruined all of my life up until now. I'm 40. I don't need this shit.
I feel like the only renaissance that movie's having is in memes. Like, but is it is it being considered like good?
Yes.
Well, the whole theory that Jar Jar was supposed to end up being the bad guy would make it. Theory. No, that I didn't make it up. It's one that's like really well, I feel like, fleshed out on the internet, and it is very convincing that was the original intent, and they had to do a hard right turn after the first movie because they were just like, no, sorry, George, your idea about Jar Jar doesn't matter because everyone hates him. Get him out of there. But there does seem to be a lot of clues in that first movie, Wolfian kind of clues, that this idiot character is pretending to be an idiot and is going to end up being the main bad guy.
He's a drunken master Jedi.
Yeah, he's a drunken master. And then
it doesn't add up.
And then they have to just like pull another like Darth out of their or Snope or whatever, like out of their butt to be like, okay, we need a new bad guy because nobody can stand Jar Jar.
Nah,
I choose to believe.
Thinking. I mean, I love that idea. It's just funny.
So
not real.
Here's the thing: is the Phantom Menace makes no sense. But it's about a trade dispute that isn't unexplained and makes no sense.
And there's midi-chlorians. What the fuck is that? And why was it necessary?
And it is of no consequence whatsoever.
Yeah, pod racing is the point of that movie.
Pod racing, but like it could have been like the prologue to the first movie, basically. The entire Phantom Menace could have been summed up in that like first crawl thing they do in the beginning.
Right.
They could have been like, we found a kid.
The thing about those movies, thing about those movies is that the plot goes on in the background. It's a movie about the slow corruption of a Senate that nobody notices.
Right.
So it's just happening in the background of all those movies, and what the main characters are doing doesn't matter.
Yes.
Like, that's not what the story is about, and that's why those movies fail, because you don't notice the thing that's happening. And that's also happening in this book a lot, I think.
Yeah,
there's always the actual plot is sneaking up on you in the background when you didn't notice it, because the main characters like this is not the story of Silk trying to save the Mandian. This is the story of the world ejecting all of its people. It's Ock's story,
And before Wolfpack gets sidelined on a discussion of a Gene Wolfe book, I'd like to go back to Star Wars and say that
fair enough.
They were influential. Those three movies were super influential for their special effects. Like,
yeah,
I feel like that changed. That changed
really
how
good.
like big budget special effects movies would look going forward. I just wanted to say that real quick. Like, they were super influential in that way. But the acting and the scripts are like garbage. Like it's like Gene, what's the guy's name? George Lucas, like, sat down as actors, were like, all right, deliver this line as absolutely poorly as you possibly can. And we're gonna write dialogue that is like ridiculously cheesy. And like, that's exactly why it's turned into a meme so perfectly. Like, okay, like, I'm gonna change the world for the better, right? For the better, right? Like, That's so bad. Like, that's the reason why it has turned into a meme, is because It's such
really
bad dialogue
They
delivered
really are very
poorly.
bad. But none of the Star Wars are actually like that good. We
Oh,
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would argue that they are
Two's
not
all right.
good.
Yeah, that they are
Yeah.
just not good.
It's
Yeah.
like they're par for the course. It's like when the X-Files had a new season, like 5 years ago or something, and it pretty much was the same level of quality as original X-Files shows, and people were like, "This fucking sucks." And it's like,
Yeah.
well, you don't understand the X-Files. You wanted
Yeah.
the Sopranos
I was
version
thinking
of the
that-
X-Files, but no, you got the real X-Files.
I'm out of the loop because I choose to think about Star Wars as little as possible.
Good.
And I won't see the new movie. I saw one of the newer movies and I was just like, I'm not watching this.
That's where I am now.
It's like the same reason why I've decided I'm not gonna see the new Dune movie, where it's I really hate the idea that I have to see a movie that I know is gonna suck because I'm supposed to see it because I liked something else at one time or something. I'm just not doing that anymore. I'm not seeing movies because I feel like I have to, even if I'm pretty sure I'm gonna hate it. But I was gonna say earlier, when you were talking about the I don't know how you would describe that trilogy of movies, that the prequels or whatever.
Yeah.
Like the Phantom Menace and that shit. Like the idea, I was thinking oh yeah, well the Phantom Menace is getting revived now because the new ones are so bad that the scale is just it doesn't fucking matter. They're all
The Phantom Menace is getting revived now because the people who were children, those movies were made for them, are now adults, and they're those movies were coming out for people who were children when Star Wars came out, and they're like, I love Star Wars, and then they watched it and they were like, I was 3 when I saw Star Wars, this sucks. And so now the people who saw the Phantom Menace are having their I love Star Wars movie and their moment, and they're like, these new ones aren't the Phantom Menace, they suck. And in another 30 years, these movies are going to be oh no, actually there's a lot of merit to these movies. They kind of completely deconstruct the second one deconstructs the whole idea of Star Wars, and that's useful. And they'll make some new movies, and those people will be like, these are horrible. It's just that's the cycle of things. That's what happens in the Bible.
But they're all the same level of good at the end.
But I feel like I grew up watching the old ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw the Phantom Menace and I was like, this is really fucking bad. Mm-hmm. And then I saw the new ones and I was like, this is really fucking bad. And then now I don't really think the old ones are good either. I kind of am just they just all are getting worse. It's nothing is the opposite is happening.
It doesn't
I'm just
hold up, yeah.
I slowly just am totally disavowing all Star Wars.
You're describing exactly what I'm saying. You matriculated out of it already. You're not part of this cycle anymore. It's for other people.
Yeah.
Also, you're getting smarter too. My favorite movie throughout my whole life has been Aliens by James Cameron, and I was super excited. I rewatched it after an 11 or 12-hour drive last week, and came home. I was like, I'm putting on Aliens. I'm gonna get stoned. It's gonna be awesome. And I hadn't seen it for maybe a few years, and I found myself just being a little bit more critical of my favorite movie all of a sudden, and still great movie. I mean, still awesome. But I really had always been in awe of it, and I think, I was just like, wow, I've seen so much more stuff since then, and I now notice little cheesy things throughout, and it's not that profound, and it's not that, that much of a critique of leadership structures, and so time had just passed, and I've just grown up a little bit, and I'm like, I don't know if this is my favorite movie anymore, but that's hard because it's always been my favorite movie. I love Aliens, but
if your favorite, I feel like there's a problem if your favorite movie doesn't keep changing.
Yeah.
Right. That's indicative of a personal stagnation.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's weird for 40-year-old dudes to be like, my favorite movie is Star Wars. Really? Favorite movie?
Yeah, I gotta say, the only way I enjoy those movies is watching the behavior of the fandom. That's what's interesting to me. It's why I go to those movies, is because I want to really understand what the hell those people are doing, because they're crazy and it's fascinating.
Or just watch it. The thing that's happening with that is that, like, at that point in your life, your brain was in a place where it could like receive art in a way that like decayed from that point on in your life. And it was like Star Wars was able to make an impression on your brain because you hadn't like totally shut it off to the potential of art to change your world. And so it's like loving Star Wars as a 40-year-old person is this like deep muscle memory feeling of being changed by some amazing story that you saw.
Yeah.
And that nothing
absolutely.
since has been able to move you because you've become an adult.
Absolutely.
Also, of course, all of these things are corporate manipulation of mythogenesis so that they can control massive population.
Yeah.
It's very definitely.
That's certainly what it is now. I don't know
Yeah.
about whatever George Lucas was on, what tip he was on in the 70s or 80s or whatever, but like, yeah.
I mean, he made the
certainly
Mark
is.
I version of what is now Skynet to completely fall prey to exactly what we're talking about.
And then he famously, as he said, sold his baby to white slavers.
Yeah,
And now
yeah.
look at it.
Which is what you're
Yep.
supposed to do with a baby that's deformed but can make you millions of dollars. Sell that shit.
Well, he's kind of getting it back now.
Really?
Yeah.
How?
He's a consultant on The Mandalorian and shit now because
Oh.
people really didn't like Kathleen Kennedy's wokeness.
Interesting. You know
Anyway,
what?
Gene.
I'm fucking fine with fucking major franchises not being culturally responsible because they're not going to ever be, so they don't have, why pretend?
To be so huge and successful is inherently culturally irresponsible.
Exactly.
To seek
So,
power is corruption.
Any image they show is going to be a corruption and a disgusting display, and so like I don't want to see, from my perspective, I don't want to see feminism whatever on a fucking Disney show because you're gonna do something disgusting that's gonna make everyone hate women because they're gonna look stupid because you're stupid.
Yeah, as foul as like right-wing reactionary like incel basement dwelling view is, they are right about the fact that any ostentatious display of like values is a total joke, and that
Yes.
it's like it's only necessary if it's fake. If you actually believe in those values, you can write a story where they're integrated without any kind of like fanfare. And if you don't really believe in them, but you want a veneer of like respectability and relevance, then you're going to put a big neon arrow pointing to that.
Totally. I agree.
Mhm.
And
Well, and it's not even just like necessarily like it's a veneer to add legitimacy or something. It's like a selling point.
Yeah, it's a trend. That's
It's a draw or whatever. You're like, oh, like we have this thing is in here.
it's responsible.
You know what I mean?
I'm responsible because I'm watching the show with the girl who has a sword and kills people instead of the boy who has a sword and kills people. So like I'm teaching my children something really responsible.
Exactly.
the weird obsession with selflessness and like the image of selflessness that's happening with
Yes.
like really famous people and Hollywood is really interesting. Like this thing that happened yesterday, this like weird giant party / fake award show or whatever that was about like vaccine equality. It was like basically like we need another Met Gala or Oscars or something where a bunch of famous people can come and be famous, but you can't really do that right now unless it's for a cause. And so you just have an event that has like no purpose except awareness and charity and this vague sort of sense of like it's okay that we're rich because we're using it. We're helping people by getting ourselves publicity today and like having a star-studded event that's catered by a bunch of like poorly paid people with a bunch of food we're gonna throw away. The whole like it's like necessary right now for every act of like a public figure to be an act of charity in a very strange way that's like just like utterly unconvincing.
Right before pandemic at the Davos summit thing, there was a Danish economist who went on a tirade that got memey about how being here, everybody wanted to talk about charity and trying to fix things with charity, and nobody would talk about taxes. And it was like being a fireman but not being allowed to use water. Like charity was just a means for these people to buy and sell a new thing with their money. It's still them being in control. If you really want to fix poverty and equality and all these things that we're talking about, pay your fucking taxes.
Yeah, you become invincible when you like embody the cause and are like putting like, it's so funny because you embody the cause by just paying for yourself to be telling people that you embody the cause. It's like nothing is conferred from the outside. It's all completely like self-powered. And it's
whenever
like
the next time you get excited about charitable spending or philanthropy in your life, just remember that there's more nonprofit and charitable spending in the state of Maryland than almost anywhere else in the United States, at least per capita, and especially here in Baltimore, where there are literally hundreds of nonprofits operating. And then just take a drive through Baltimore and see how that's working out for you.
Yeah.
There's no relationship between nonprofit and philanthropy, and the only relationship would be like an inverse one, right?
Yeah.
But
it's
like
a job that like somebody gets paid and has like a salary and benefits and knows they're going to be paid. Like
it is
that
it is
money
vanity
comes from
projects
somewhere.
with no oversight.
And they get public money, meaning they're actually taking taxpayer dollars to do nothing with when they could be going towards things that actually benefit people who pay taxes or people who can't pay taxes because they have no, whatever.
I've never understood how like it's like so insulting the way that the arts councils in the town work, where like you have these people who like go to the same bars as artists that have a salary of like, a couple tens of thousands of dollars a year that they know they're going to get. And they're like given a little territory. And within that territory, there's like no measurement of how many of these artists can make a living and how many can make a living after we help them. Like that's like not even a topic. Like we give opportunities for someone to play one show or hang one gallery, and like now I've justified my like $40,000 a year. It's so weirdly insulting, and yet like there's no discourse whatsoever about but anti-art. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, that $40,000 could go right into the pockets of the artist. It's not like anyone is lacking the ability to hang their own painting up or like find a place to play the song.
I mean, you just said a mouthful and you're talking about the arts in general, but you have to keep in mind that like fucking basic shit like education and infrastructure and just housing all have these enormous nonprofit systems surrounding them, and the systems are like completely inefficient and not functioning at all, and yet there's millions of dollars going into these things. And you nailed it right there. I mean, if you're talking about like the Station North Arts District or whatever, yeah, maybe they have like literally like 2 rinky-dink little employees, but that like, when you're talking about like public health and housing, there are tons and there are millions of dollars on administrators being spent. It is absolutely wasteful, and like it doesn't make any sense. Like that money specifically needs to be spent on hard costs, and that's something in the education system too. I mean, it's just like crazy.
Everything we learn about causes comes from people whose career is like involved, like is the actual priority.
Yeah. Or, I mean, just since we're talking about it, and since I care about this shit, like think about the nonprofit Thread. Anyone familiar with this?
No, tell me about it.
Thread is a nonprofit that you'll hear of. It employs a ton of people here in Baltimore City, and it sounds great. So I'm going to describe what they do. They hook kids up with tutors who like concentrate on those kids in these these problem neighborhoods and these like tough areas, and the tutors like work with them and make sure they're on track to go to college and like work specifically with the kids. So I'm calling you up, I'm bringing you on over, I'm going to work with you on your homework. That's fucking awesome, right? You hear that and you're like, hell yeah, I can get down with that. That sounds great. Okay. Now, so like individual kids have like individuals who are being paid for through nonprofit to work with them. Okay. That doesn't address the fact that the school itself can't do that. That's the problem, is that the school doesn't have the resources, because the resources have been diverted from public institutions to private nonprofit institutions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, get rid of Thread. We want tutors in the school who work with the teachers. We don't want a separate nonprofit paid for by Deutsch and fucking whatever that dude from New York's name is. Like,
and then it becomes like a pat on the back for a Hawkins kid, and
that's exactly what it is.
Like, I don't know what their
Teach for
results
America
are.
is like a very similar thing, where it's like you can just get people who are trying to build up their resume for law school to teach poorly for a few years, and it really it's just not very good for anybody. Like, it's a shitty experience for the students and the teacher, in most cases at least.
It's very bad for public schools. Teach for America.
Yeah, I mean, like why would you try to serve like the student population that needs the most help by giving them a bunch of 22-year-olds who don't actually plan on being educators?
And then
the reason is that Teach for America is funded by groups that want to destabilize public education.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And so then that's by design. There are and we see that now. Public education is being dismantled slowly but surely. And that's why like online education companies and charter schools are like chomping at the bit now that the pandemic's here. Like the pandemic is like really driving those last stakes into the public education system. But yeah, I mean, Teach for America is all wrapped up in that. I mean, that's because you have these school systems like in Baltimore where they can't keep teachers. I was a teacher myself for a spell. You can't keep them. It's not a practical job for a lot of people. Some people it is, but in general, it's very different. It's very challenging. And so Teach for America comes in, right? And they say, no problem. We're gonna hook you up with some teachers. The teachers can't teach. They don't know how. They're not teachers. They don't have education backgrounds. They're just fucking for people with maybe good intentions, but who knows? Then you stick them in a school and they last in general not 2 years. The programs to last for 2 years. Most of them don't last 2 years.
Yeah.
Last a year maybe.
They kind of threaten you that you owe them money if you don't stay for 2 years, but I think that
yes, they do.
It's like I think it's actually kind of not super legal for them to try to get that money from you. So, but they make it seem like you're gonna owe a ton of money if you don't roll out your term.
Yes, that is accurate. Yeah, and so that happened to me, and I ended up paying them back, which is one of the reasons why I started working in offices, so I could make enough money to pay back the new teacher project, which is
it's basically like pay them back or hire a lawyer to prove that you don't have to and spend your money on the lawyer. It's nefarious. Those are the people that brought us DeRay.
Yes. Yeah, DeRay is interesting in that way. Yeah.
He was a fast mover up the TFA hierarchy. Yeah. Would have been so interesting if he would have been able to keep it going for a little while longer. He's an interesting character.
Duray's interesting for sure.
His Twitter was so insane.
Did he disappear? I haven't seen anything from Duray in a while.
Yeah, what happened to Duray? He's
Well,
probably
he
just working
ran for mayor and lost by a ton.
Yeah.
Here.
He didn't even have a chance.
Yeah. And I think that he didn't even really campaign here. He did a lot of fundraising in other cities, in like New York.
He was kind of doing an Andrew Yang thing. It was just to promote his brand. I feel like he knew he wasn't going to be mayor.
Yeah, but then after that, he hasn't really been. I feel like involved.
Yeah,
I think he shows up on a podcast, Save America.
Sounds
part
about
of
right.
that.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if he's like a host or a guest or what, but I know his name is that's the only place I've seen his name is attached to that. I don't really know much about what that is other than that it's supposed to be pretty repulsive, like square as hell.
It's like Obama's speechwriters podcast, I think.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, see those. That's the kind of people that I work with. Yeah, that's a type of person. That's a popular podcast.
Yeah, that's blandness. That's like how.
Jen's on mute.
The measurement.
Sorry.
We're talking about debate.
I've been listening the whole time, but I was setting up a coffee pot. I'm like too tired.
I need more coffee.
Man,
I'm a fan of doing stepping off camera to do something while listening.
Yeah. I turned the speaker up so I can still hear it. I mean, I was thinking like there were so many different comments I would have thrown in, but it's not, none of them are like that crucial.
I almost forgot a huge thing that I want to talk about, and as time's clicking on, I want to say it now. Okay, the significance of the order and the genders of the gods as they're laid out in order by Lemur. When he just
by Lemur.
Yeah, there he does like a chronological explanation.
Mm-hmm. He skips right over Fea.
He kind of throws Fea, Spix, and Thelx into one category.
Mm-hmm.
He mentions her. They're just all three of those are mentioned in the same paragraph.
Yeah,
and they're
real quick.
Yeah, they're given like barely a line. But I wanted to know what everyone's thoughts on what the significance of the order, the birth order is, and also of the genders. One thing that I notice is that the genders are inverse of our 9 planets.
Yeah.
That we have, their situation is what, 5 girls and 2 boys.
Yeah.
And then our 7 planets are the exact opposite, 5 boys and 2 girls.
Yeah.
What is that about, Gene?
I mean, it's just like, maybe it's just pointing to the fact of that pantheon being kind of like a farce on a pantheon. I mean, it's literally like, oh, okay, here's my kids, here's me, here's my mistress.
Well, it facilitates the
it's an explanation for why there's so many of them at least.
Yeah. It facilitates the story of he wants a male heir and he just can't get an acceptable one. You know? Right, because Tartarus is the first boy and he's blind, so he doesn't count.
Yep. And then Hyrax is Psycho.
Right.
Which is like, what, Typhon isn't? Come on.
No, I mean, Hyrax is psycho because Typhon is.
Yeah.
They say that specifically, that he inherited his father's madness.
Then
Tartarus rules, though. I love Tartarus. That's God in this story.
I'm wondering, do they ever say what Fea's power is? What is Fea? Like,
she's fat.
Yeah, they say that she's fat, but like...
I think the Fea is kind of a Caradwin, like, pig goddess.
Oh.
Yeah. Because she's the goddess of food. And I think Fea's Day relates to Thursday, which is, the Jupiter expansive.
Okay. I don't think they mentioned her, and all they said that she was fat. So I was like, okay, is she like a mothery kind of thing?
Sure. But
no,
like
but
cornucopia.
But in the cornucopia sense. And Echidna is the mother in the sense of like, your mom wants to kill you.
Well, she's like the Cretan snake, the woman holding 2 snakes, Although she's also kind of, so I have this idea about Hera, right? Goddess of marriage. What the fuck? Well, but what is marriage in this world? It's where like alliances are formed. It's where you gain land. Hera is contract law. So it's like that, this kind of, or like how the Furies are these women that drive blood vengeance. And then after the men take over, they become the watchdogs of corruption. They're going to get blood vengeance on the men when their system isn't living up to snuff. Like I think that Echidna is that kind of like nemesis figure.
Well, she's kind of the like patriarchy version of the mom that makes you want to hate women, right?
That's the patriarchy's view of that figure, but originally she is like so the patriarchy marries itself to that person because in the matrifocal culture beforehand she was the leader, so like they get legitimacy, and this is where you get like the whole idea of the Holy Grail or the Princess Andromeda. Perseus has to go save Andromeda because then he gets land. Now he can be king.
Someone online was drawing this line between Echidna and the Cumaean, which I think is really interesting because it's like the snake thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
I find that really interesting.
Yeah, totally.
I like when Lemur is
Echidna? No. Could she?
I don't see why she couldn't be.
Why couldn't she?
I mean, we've already seen, I guess it's like, we know that the kind of like power creatures on Earth relate to things recurring in the other books later.
Yeah.
So, and you know, time is all it's fucked. So
there is a theory out there about the extraterrestrial nature of Typhon.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you mentioned that he's from Green.
Potentially.
That's cool.
Every time I try to like think about structurally green and blue and earth and the world, my brain, like when I try to like map the like big image, my brain it's like I start to think about it and then I'm like, I can't fucking think about this right now. Like I can't, it's like too fucking much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Well, it's a ladder we have to climb, you know?
Yeah.
We'll get that. You just got to keep another turn of the screw, you know?
I mean, another like 2 years from now, we can have that conversation.
I cannot wait till we talk about Short Sun. Because that's when we talk about the whole thing finally. That's our start.
I know.
You know, like we finally
crazy.
Are like,
and then we have to start over.
The whole thing. Yeah, exactly.
Like there's no way. Like now we have to start. We got to do Short Sun and then we have to start all the way back over.
Because then we have the benefit of being able to talk about the whole thing the whole time.
Yeah, and also I don't think when we start over, I don't think we'll have to go chapter and verse in the same way. It'll just be. So it'll be interesting to see once like we can explode time. We'll be having a grand old time.
Yeah.
But anyway, I do agree with the thing that we've said before, which is like before we start talking about Short Sun, everyone has to read it. Like there's no way. It's like not possible to do the thing we've been doing.
Yeah, you really can't talk about any part of it without talking about every part of it.
But anyway, I'm psyched for that. It's gonna be weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, the structure anyway. So I just think like all the more you read them over and over again, the more they're all the parts of all of them are related to all the parts of the other. And so it seems weird for the Cumaean and the Echidna to not be like related.
Yeah. Something to think about. Because it's like, it seems like it's not weird to suggest that any character might also be any other character.
And I mean, if you think about it, it's like the Cumaean is kind of a character who at any point has access to seemingly to like whoever's in power. So like there's no reason to think that, and it's like how does Typhon become Typhon? He's not doing it by himself.
Right.
Like,
And he is the first.
how did he get there? It makes the idea of Typhon and the Cumaean having an alliance makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
It makes Echidna. It adds a layer to Echidna that I think is really interesting.
I dig it.
But Echidna also being a computer program that's like kind of how we talked about Scylla being like a 300-year-old, 12-year-old or whatever.
Yeah.
The computer program entity and the Cumaean are not the same thing. Like they're not the same thing, but it's like an interesting. It makes it all really interesting.
Well, I feel like so the Cumaean is a higher structure of information than the human mind. So to download the Cumaean would, out of necessity, be a dumbing down of what that is. Yeah, totally. Which produces this crazy jealousy.
The Cumaean is like the double helix, right? It's like the spiral,
right?
The timeless spiral, and you take that and you turn it into a snake.
Right.
It's like
So
yeah, exactly. It's kind of a metaphor. It's a literalization of her.
It's cool. I think thinking about it that way makes Echidna more interesting.
Totally. Were we going to talk further about the genders of the gods?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think it's also an interesting thing because it also points to like the humanity of Typhon and the humanity of the humanity of the characters of the gods, but like the kind of like also the futility of like trying to have power and maintain power and like control things, because it's like he just keeps having kids because he's trying to have like the kid that he really wants to have, and he like keeps having kids that aren't the kid he wants to have. So he has to like create Silk as like a avatar that happens later, because he's like, oh, these kids are gonna fuck up my plans. I gotta have like this kind of like other thing that's gonna, I think it's interesting. I think that's interesting. Just the dynamics of dynasty power and how it typically doesn't like work out that well in the long-term plan of like, if you're a ruler with a long-term plan, handing it off to like a kid is not always gonna secure
it's like nature
in the way that you want it to.
I read an interesting thing one time about the misogyny of mythemes where men just make their own child without a woman, and like this weird like uber, and like which really culminates in like Sparta, where like they really want to be able to just have men so badly, and the misogyny that comes along with those mythemes, which has an implication on Typhon, that in the end he just builds his own special boy.
And I mean, if the Cumaean is the co-creator, then it's like, I mean, she's more powerful than he is.
Mm-hmm.
So she has more to say about like, he wants a mini Typhon and she's not going to give him one, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think
Elizabeth
is also
the
interesting.
First style.
I think this narrative, which is like the narrative of the book, it makes the case stronger that Silk is a direct clone of Tyson.
Yeah.
Like
I feel like
something-
once you think about that, there's no way it's not true. It's like
Yeah.
Yeah.
feels really obvious once it's like introduced as a concept. It's like,
Yeah.
duh, that's what that is. Yeah.
So then, how much do we want to entertain the ridiculous notion that Mukor is a direct clone of the Kumeyan? She looks witchy.
I like
Or
it.
even like Marin,
No.
maybe. I don't know.
Marin?
Yeah. The witch girl.
Oh,
The-
Marin.
Yeah. Severian's sister.
Severian's sister.
Ooh.
Yeah. Potentially.
How do you spell Marin?
Merryn, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
I feel like there's a point in Short Sun where it's directly stated that she's Severian's sister.
Mhm.
Really? Cool.
You might not have gotten there yet.
Or I might have gotten there and not realized.
And
Sure.
I mean, if you got,
Oh, you mean they directly say it?
I mean, maybe they don't. Maybe they don't directly say it. Maybe I just felt like that.
It's a thing that's debated whether or not he says it directly or not.
Oh, cool. Oh, I can't wait. Maybe.
But I
maybe
feel
I've
like
read it already.
she is in. Now I can't remember. There's too many books.
She has
I
to
feel
be.
like she has a cameo
Has to be
in
someone.
the world, though.
I never thought about it, but she's definitely a clone of someone because she just has to be. It's Nicole. Come on.
Mookie, you talking about?
Mukor.
It just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Mukor is just
Also,
such an
she has a
X
crazy
factor.
power.
I
What was
just
that, Tim?
don't understand Mukor at this point yet. Maybe I will later.
Maybe not.
Yeah, you got to be open to the possibility that you don't.
But Mukor in Short Sun definitely is like an interesting. Thinking about Mukor in Short Sun and trying to like think about that with the Kumeyan is an interesting. Or like thinking about the Kumeyan and Marin in New Sun, and then thinking about Marble and Mukor in Short Sun is a really interesting thing. That,
Yes,
Yeah.
totally.
That's like really fucking
Holy
interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like
With the
even
fish
just
jumping up on the rock.
visually, like the tableau that is created of each of those like dominant kind of scenes of those two duos is like real crazy. I never thought about how similar that is.
Yeah.
So cool.
Like the
Can't talk
the
about Short
two-
Sun
the-
yet.
The two witches. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
But I'll just say that it does add to what I said earlier, which I think that Horn and Severian have essentially the same exact things happen to them.
Mhm.
At least in the first book.
Well, but Horn and Silk. I mean, it's like Horn and Silk and Severian are all like kind of
Yeah.
They're all avatars of the same archetype.
Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, you can't separate Horn from Silk,
No.
really.
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, this happens. You know what I mean? The beginnings of his journey have strong echoes of Severian's journey.
Yeah.
Do you think that some of this is maybe powered by Gene Wolfe trying to understand his own writing and trying to be like, what is this thing I did? And
Or trying to like clarify down to like a point, like clarify through obscurity and like piling on more information somehow, just like
Well, we were talking about Star Wars earlier, and like the way that like when you experience Star Wars as a child, it gives you like a sense of wonder and attachment that is difficult to tap back into. And I feel like Wolfe was very inspired by the Pulp Fiction and the worlds of Jack Vance and J.R.R. Tolkien when he read them as a young man. And like, in order to recreate a sense of wonder, in contemporary sci-fi, you have to like push into the realms of the fantastic, right? And like, you keep having to like push out into the unknown, just like how at the edges of Middle Earth, like you can get into Middle Earth, but at a certain point you kind of reach a hazy edge to that world where you're trying to peer
through the mists, and you're like, what's going on over there? You know, like what happens to those characters? And you know, like the world kind of ends. And at a certain point, I mean, Gene Wolfe, I feel like is engineering, you know, story and world building that has these kind of like murky, cloudy kind of edges to them in an intellectual way. But you're like drawn towards looking deeper into them, you know, or an experience that I'm sure he had and was enamored by as a young person. And I feel like he spends his life, at least in the solar cycle, really creating these kind of interesting situations that don't tie up. They have, I don't want to say loose ends, but I think that they're expansive in a way where they never end, if that makes sense.
Yeah. They tap into the eternal
no
poetic
borders to this world.
Yeah, but it's more than allegory. It's way more than allegory. Like the characters have symbolic functions and properties and stuff, but it's not this is that, because he keeps pushing in underneath of the symbols. So that that's where I feel like the looseness is that he's going where we can't see any deeper. And he knows that something's down there. He can like use it, but we can't see it exactly.
This book is a willful and skillful thaumaturgic spell. I feel certain of this.
Well, Jordan, you were talking about Hyperion, I think. Have you started that?
No, I finished it the other day.
Oh,
Nice,
cool.
you blew through that.
Well, because I got it from the library, so I had to.
Okay.
And so, like, I feel like that's sort of like a future past kind of vaguely Wolfian kind of sci-fi. Maybe I haven't read it, but is it kind of like
it?
It's compared to Gene Wolfe, and I do think it's probably, you know, because it is a story told in pieces that different. So, like, the structure is based on Canterbury Tales, where, like, they're on a trip and each person every night tells their story, and it's, like, really long. And it kind of... I don't think they really pull it all together at the end of the book, and I don't know if that happens, but I think there's suggestions of, like, a larger story happening through all of their stories. And, like, each of them has, like, are sort of, like, a different genre, I would say.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you get a different vision. You get a different like feeling of what the world is based on everyone's story. Like more people seem more like fantasy oriented, and more people there's like a cyberpunk detective story in it.
I'd say that Hyperion is like it's like ready to be filmed in a way that Wolfe like doesn't ever care about.
I think that's why I brought it up.
Yeah. Well, it's a little.
It's more straightforward.
It's definitely more straightforward, but you still get this kind of blending of perspectives. I think, but I mean, the literary. I feel like Hyperion is, and I don't necessarily mean this as a criticism, but I feel like it is more self-consciously literary than Wolfe's work. I feel like.
This is
like New Sun in particular just is literary. It's not like it's not. Hyperion seems to have being literary as one of its projects. I think in a way that Wolfe's work tends to not. But though he still gets there, you know.
It's shit.
Right.
It's
well,
story Hyperion. It's Oh God! Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say, but
I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
maybe this is mean, but I feel like Hyperion is a really cool toy, and Book of the New Sun, Long Sun is something way more than a toy.
I have been unable to read Hyperion because it was recommended to me because of Gene Wolfe, and I started reading it, and it is straightforward, and because I'm thinking Gene Wolfe, I can't stand it. I've read that prologue bit over and over again, and I'm like, I don't want to read this.
It's got
Ian
a lot of
Banks
really
also
cool...
has a similar problem where I'm just like, this isn't the Gene Wolfe that people keep comparing it to.
It's just the
Yeah.
closest comparison, I think.
Yeah, like it would appeal to someone of. It's easy to see why it would appeal to the same reader, but their brains are not similar.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, and Dan Simmons also has a lot of like really weird, like kind of gross reactionary stuff. It doesn't show up in Hyperion as much, but he's clearly politically in a different place and politically motivated. There's a political element to what he does that Gene. That's why Gene's so interesting to pick apart as politically, because it's so complex. And not reactionary in the slightest. So
it's questioning itself.
Yeah, it's very inward looking.
I remember what I was going to say now, which is that Hyperion is like the story bits in New Sun. It's like if they made that into a novel, just those parts. Like the part where he is in the hospital and they're all telling stories, like that. Is if that was like an 800-page novel or however long it is.
It sounds pretty cool.
It's fun. I recommend it.
I haven't gone. I read it like 10 years ago, so I'm curious what it would be like to go back.
Take it with a grain of salt. There's a lot of like Mark said, there's like shadows of weird political stuff where I'm like, what does he mean by this? Interesting. And there's a bunch of like really corny sex scenes and stuff. But I was like, the reason I brought it up is to ask if it was like a dude book. And it kind of is, but it's not overwhelmingly offensively a dude book. It's just like just enough. But you're very much are like, oh, this is like, I don't know, is it an 80s book? Is it a 90s book or something? It's like
90s, I think. It's set up really well for like a 22-year-old who's read the Canterbury Tales to be like, whoa, cool, which is how I read it basically. Yeah. But I think there's
a lot of very, very cool stuff in it. A lot of really cool.
It makes you feel smart. Like if you read it and you get it, it makes you feel smart and. Right. For better or for worse. I don't know.
I think that goes back to what you were trying to describe as like being like literary as part of its project. Is that
right.
I feel like
reading Wolfe does not make you feel smart. Like if anything,
it makes you feel dumb.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like you have to struggle with it in a way that like Simmons just wanted to kind of I don't know. Like I guess a lot of what I'm saying is pretty critical. I did like that book though when I read it, so it's hard to.
It's enjoyable. It's not like a classic. I said I recommend it, but only because you're interested in it. I wouldn't be like you got to read Hyperion to anyone.
Right. Yeah.
I just like saw someone mention it online, and I was like, I'm kind of in this thing right now where I'm just reading and watching things that people just mention and say are good without trying to decide if I'll like it or not.
Oh, I've been doing that. I have like a running list on my phone of just like shit that gets mentioned in conversation, which is why Kenny and I watched that, and I don't ever remember like why it's there. But Kenny and I watched the movie Sneakers last night because it was on my
What'd
list.
you think?
It was funny.
I love that movie. I think
like a heist film,
awesome.
Right?
Yeah, it's a proto hackers.
I kind of assumed that it was a book club person who mentioned it.
I definitely mentioned Sneakers off. I'm aghast at how many people living in this computer-based culture have not seen Sneakers.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It was entertaining.
It was like an ensemble cast heist movie with the internet's just being born kind of vibe.
Yeah, totally.
I remember loving it as a kid, but I haven't seen it.
The star of the movie is Robert Redford in 1992. Like, it's funny.
It's got Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, Dan Aykroyd.
Playing himself, basically.
Sidney Poitier.
Yeah, Sidney Poitier. Ben Kingsley.
I've seen the cover of the poster for this movie a lot.
Burning my brain.
It's just funny. It's a funny movie. It's like it's like just poppy. It's like a poppy, like fun movie.
You know it's good because Steve Tobolowsky's in it. And Steve Dublasky is in every good movie somewhere.
I don't know who that is.
He is the guy the really clean man, who folds their garbage like this. He's anal.
Oh yeah.
My voice is
yeah,
my
yeah,
passport.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's also in Groundhog's Day. He plays Ned, the insurance salesman. That man's in every single movie. He's all over the place.
That guy, I saw him in something crazy recently. What was that?
Yeah. He shows up.
In Mississippi Burning, he's the KKK mayor. He's an amazing actor.
I see him. I saw him in something really great recently.
Did what is happening in this book right now? We touched in it a little bit. We were talking about the gods. We talked about lemur a little bit.
Oh yeah, I wanted to
die.
definitely talk about the species of the Lorisidae. Like, why are the counselors that species? The thing that I found about them is that they're famous for moving really slow or stopping when they're in danger, that they can grab onto a branch and it takes a great amount of force to remove them from it.
Cool.
That seemed like, I was like, all right, there's my answer.
Yeah,
That's what he does to life.
Yeah, and power.
Yeah, and they're in danger, and they've like their reaction is to slow down. They're not trying to get off the ship. They're trying to get more on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and also another thing about that is this strategy only works in their natural environment because it's leafy, that they're from very leafy areas, and that if they do this outside of their home where there aren't leaves, that they get killed right away because the predator can spot them. And I thought it's interesting that this place is getting scorched. All the leaves will fall off the environ. And then the metaphorical leaves of the world are all falling off.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe that's why they're all that weird.
I think that's really interesting.
That's
Like
cool.
Good idea.
Lemur, Loris, Pato, and Galago.
God, I find
so
Pato
smart.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's kind of the Joker.
Gene?
No, Pato.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Isn't
he's a
there
lunatic.
something? Doesn't Lemur tell a story about how Pato
Oh yeah, he kills his way into the Ayuntamiento.
he extorted Lemur into the position or something?
Yeah. He's a psychopath. I'm glad he's dead.
The immortality that Lemur describes and is so proud of, really also, I feel like there's another 2020s weird prescient thing, like this idea that they're gonna keep giving the chems new parts and the chems are gonna keep their old bodies alive in this weird tiny little feedback loop that's actually so freaking fragile. And then
that is going to be the plot of Matrix 4 Resurrections.
Oh, it is?
I kind of think so.
Interesting. But yeah, but that's it does seem also to be the plot of a lot of rich people right now. AI and ideas that technology is going to somehow advance the life expectancy. And there are now some weird blood experiments and stuff.
Yeah.
I guess it's an inevitable conclusion to a society that is entirely materialistic. If material is all that there is, then death is the worst thing that can happen. And since material is all that it is, then material can solve the problem of death.
Yeah. Martine Rothblatt is trying to start a company that will download your consciousness onto the internet and then also clone you so that you can upload your consciousness into your successive clones.
This stuff all has this crazy problem of like inverting the fact that we think about our brain through the metaphor of a machine, and then it says, okay, so that our brain is a machine, and anything we can do with a machine, we can do with our brain,
Right.
even if we don't really understand the brain. We know it's a machine, basically.
Right.
So like these are just dreams based on a metaphor. They're not actually going to happen.
Right.
You're never going to be able to download yourself into a body. That's not going to happen.
Right. That's a different thing.
A different thing than what? What you just described?
What you downloaded is a different thing than you. I mean, you're also the same thing in another spectrum that we're not really equipped to experience outside of religious ecstasy. But
you might be able to. I don't know, but I wouldn't rule it out as a thing that could happen.
I mean, the whole thing is that it requires our brains to be the same as machines. But we invented machines, and now we're using our invention as a metaphor for ourselves, which is like basic. It's flawed on a very basic level.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. But we might not understand the brain yet. Like
we definitely don't understand the brain, and that's the point.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like we're not going to understand it to find out. Oh, it's so much simpler than a machine.
We might.
I mean, it's like a cart before the horse thing.
I don't know. I'm just saying, like, sometimes I think there might be like really much more basic things going on inside of us than we think, but I'm not sure about that.
I think both at different times.
If that's true, that also doesn't necessarily follow that then a machine could be used to do the same thing. Like it might be
I mean,
so
of
basic.
course, it doesn't follow. I'm just saying I wouldn't rule out downloading our consciousnesses into machines. I'm not saying I'm for it or that, I'm just saying like it might happen.
I'm willing to bet never gonna happen.
More or less, I hope that's the case. Yeah.
Just because it never happens, which I kind of agree with you, it doesn't mean it's not possible.
Oh yeah, it's possible, and it won't happen.
Done it. Or won't do it for whatever reason. Like won't be able to.
Well, I mean, the woman who is offering this service also sues you if you try to claim ownership over your copy. Like she says that it's legally a separate entity. So I feel like that's kind of shooting herself in the foot right there.
That's really interesting. She's like, this isn't you. I'll do it for you, but it's not you, it's someone else.
Right. It's them. So you basically are just having a child that is also just exactly you, in the hopes that somehow you can experience that.
But a you that knows you're a copy of you is not gonna grow in any of the same directions as a you that didn't think you were a copy of you.
No, it becomes the psychotic killer version of yourself. It resents existing and wants to stop all life. But you engineered it to be the genius version, so it's gonna succeed.
What if I engineered it to be dumber than I am?
Well, there is that, I suppose.
And just really happy and nice.
It's gonna want a mate. It's gonna be so mad if you don't make it.
Oh yeah, this is there's an episode of X-Files about this.
Oh.
Frankenstein.
Yeah, exactly. Modern Prometheus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which has echoes. It's a Vince Gilligan episode, so it has echoes in Breaking Bad. The fumigation tent is featured in this episode.
Cool.
I gotta say, I am watching Breaking Bad for the second time, and it's way more surprising than I would expect. For some reason, I didn't expect to be really like blown away the second time, but I've been very impressed.
Yeah, that show's very tight. There's a lot of Wolfian things going on in that show.
Cool.
It does seem like he plays a real long game, and he's fine playing it slow in a way that, like, it's a lot more impressive the second time. You see how comfortable that the people are rolling that out so slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I forget if it's the second or third season, but there's like one season in there where I think is like really good. It's the one where like they keep cutting to like the shot of like the teddy bear in the pool.
That's the second season.
That's second season.
Yeah.
Really good. That's like
Yeah, it's a sculpture of information the same way that the solar labyrinth is a sculpture of information.
I'm really excited for next year when we get the end of Better Call Saul, because they say, I mean, he's claimed it's going to be a lupine looping, that you will think differently about the entire story of Breaking Bad once you see the last episode of Better Call Saul.
Oh, that's cool. I got to catch up on that show then.
Yeah, he's saying you're going to see a completely new version of what happened during Breaking Bad once you understand the whole story of Saul.
Talk about a slow burn, man. Better Call Saul is like a defiant television show in the way that it just takes its time. It doesn't always have forward moving plot really. There's kind of just long detours and pauses and kind of Tarantino-esque asides and stuff. That's an interesting show.
The
Not even
character,
compelling a lot of the time, but I just love Bob Odenkirk so much that it is compelling. But
yeah, and I was got the last 2 seasons of Saw. I've been really frustrated because I'm just come the fuck on. I know where we have to go. Let's get there. But then they just pull out these characters where it's all right, I'll watch Nacho do anything, or I'll watch Lalo do anything. I'm fine just watching that character do literally anything at all.
yeah,
He's just so terrifying. Oh, and Michael McKean's villain was the other thing was that dude Chuck is one of the greatest villains ever on TV.
Yeah, he's
top
Moriarty
three.
kind of thing.
Yeah, he's so Michael McKean. Fucking amazing.
Michael McKean is like a champion hero of humanity. That dude fucking rules. He's so good. He's so fucking good.
Should I watch Breaking Bad? Would I like it?
Michael McKean's in Better Call Saul.
Okay.
And you would
I
love
have to
Breaking
watch
Bad.
Breaking Bad to watch Better Call Saul.
I would because it's more rewarding because it is very Wolfian. They just do these little tiny things that end up meaning so much. But the whole thing is pulled off. I think it's also Wolfian in the way that Wolfe is just a sci-fi book with no pretensions of being literary. Breaking Bad is very similar. It's
a good show, Jordan. It'll pull you in. You
I
can't
heard
deny that.
So the reason I haven't watched it yet is because somebody told me that in today's world it wouldn't be the same. But maybe
that's
they're
what I
wrong.
thought. But rewatching it, I've been really
you said that
impressed.
you're watching it now and it's good. And I'm did I choose wrong?
Yeah, I expected to kind of be oh yeah, this again and that again, but no, the second watch has been really I think I like a lot of it more. There's a lot of actors that I like a lot more the second time where I'm damn, that person's done a lot of work and I didn't give them enough credit the first time.
It's a little growy.
Is it as good as The Sopranos? Is it that kind of
Better?
level?
It's better.
Yeah,
it's
I would say that it's
better.
much better than The Sopranos.
Definitely better.
Much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the writing is on a whole.
That's not real.
It definitely is. I mean, it wouldn't exist without The Sopranos, of course. It has every opportunity to be better than The Sopranos because of the ensuing time between the two. But
it builds
it
upon
definitely is.
the promises. It builds upon the advances made by The Sopranos.
Exactly.
Whereas other shows just try to be The
It
Sopranos,
also has
so
an
they're not
ending
that good.
and
Uh-oh.
Oh, we lost.
It's a good freeze frame.
Yeah.
It's 12:30, which means we've been going for 3.5 hours now.
Yeah.
And also now we're just talking about TV, so I kind of am fading. But
No, that's legit.
You want to discuss our next meeting?
yeah. So do you guys want to meet IRL next time
Yeah.
for our 3rd anniversary?
Yes, but I cannot do that at 9:00.
We could do it back to the normal 10.
Okay.
I think we were gonna do because also it's 10:10 at 10. You can't do 10:10 at 9.
Is it
True.
possible?
That shit don't make no sense.
Is it possible to do it outside, do you think? Or is there not a way to stream it outside? I'm outside.
That
I don't know. I can't
becomes
answer that
difficult.
question
It
in a
depends.
technical sense. And also, maybe we could try it on the porch. I mean, I'm a little afraid of mosquitoes still.
Okay.
Or does anyone have unlimited wireless? You could just Is that a thing that could happen? I mean, if
We
it
could
was
try
on
it.
their
We could
phone?
try it like if we did it on the porch, and whoever was like whatever machine was controlling the stream was like close enough to the front door. I think it's definitely like possible. We could try it on
Yeah.
the porch.
What about doing it where Connor is sitting right now?
In my house? I don't think that I can get that to fly here. I'm very sorry.
I mean, we wouldn't come in.
Right, but it would. It's not going to work out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Connor's setup's not really ideal for it.
We can do it. We can try it on the porch. I mean, we can also do it inside, but is it like COVID reasons you don't want to do it inside?
I'm just thinking about that. Yeah.
It's fair.
I'm sorry to be that way.
I mean,
Don't
the
be sorry.
screen-
Don't be
there's
sorry.
room for 6 people on the porch, and it has a screen so that you don't get eaten by mosquitoes.
Yeah.
That ain't bad.
And I think that we could get a good enough connection if we have our setup on the like. I think you could probably get decent Wi-Fi on the porch in general, but it'll be even better if you have it right next to the door.
Yeah.
And we just have the door open.
Yeah.
Is it possible to have like multiple mics or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ryan's got a couple of USB
I would
mics.
think that sound would probably be the weirdest thing about it, doing it outside, but it's pretty quiet over here.
Yeah, I'll bring those 2 mics that I have that we used before we ever went Zoom. We used 2, like the same 2 I got.
I think we can make it. I think we can make it happen on the porch.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
It's big. There's enough room out there.
We got the
And
chug.
I'm in.
We get the chug in there.
Yeah, we'll get the chug.
Come on.
Dougie.
Come on.
Chuggy. All right.
Chug.
Like a bunch
Oh,
of.
wait.
But he's got to pick up a bunch of Pringles.
Oh, I can pick up the chug because I'm right around the corner too, from Charmington's.
Oh, cool. Yeah, maybe I'll get some. Oh, maybe I'll get bagels.
Funny
Did
one.
Johan say anything else?
Oh, probably.
I bet
Sorry,
he said
Johan.
a bunch of. I bet he
Yeah.
said a bunch of shit.
He does not think Breaking Bad is better than The Sopranos.
That's
Yeah.
crazy, Johan. You're crazy.
Well, I'll be the judge. I'll be the final judge.
Sopranos
Yeah.
changed its whole writing staff like halfway through the show. That and Breaking Bad was guided by the same vision the whole time. That right
That's
there.
good the whole time.
There's
Good the whole time.
no
I know
way.
you feel that way.
Season four Sopranos goes so far down so fast.
No.
Yeah, when they have him fall in love with Melfi again for no apparent reason, it's over. The show's done.
He never dropped the candle. That's how love is.
Nah,
Sorry.
new dudes came to write it and were like, well, why did we leave this thing? I mean, this is characters. Let's do this again.
Oh, pish posh.
What else did
See the
Johan
scene.
say
Yeah, what else is
about The Sopranos?
He says the peak of The Sopranos was higher. The episode where Tony is sick and has to kill Big Pussy. I've never seen The Sopranos, so this is not really anything I know about.
Yeah,
He says, the episode where Tony
is
is sick and has to kill Big Pussy is so great it beats anything in Breaking Bad.
That seemed to happens every season in Breaking Bad. Like the season where Jesse kills Gail Bedecker is as good as that.
Yeah, that's just constantly happening.
It is. Johan probably hasn't. He needs to rewatch. He needs to do his second watch, I think.
All right.
I encourage him not just so that he can have the same opinion as me, so that he can have the joy of finding his opinion on his own. Because it
Yes,
will
well,
be
spread
joyful.
joy. That's nice.
Let's see a
I feel
Brian
like Breaking
Cranston.
Bad is a show that has this thing that happens sometimes of I feel emotions about it that I can only feel about. These emotions are unique to Breaking Bad. And it's doubly amazing because I feel like that usually only happens in crazy speculative sci-fi shit where it's I rejected my wife because she was a robot and now I find I'm a robot too, so I can be in love again. That's an insane emotion, but I feel the same thing is happening in Breaking Bad for the actual world. So potentially I could find these emotions someplace.
Cool.
And that's weird.
And you know what? That's what I think religion is.
Yeah, totally.
It's a great prestige drama.
No, it's experiencing the multitude of emotions that can be experienced on this plane of existence.
Yeah, piercing through emotion into divinity.
One of the parts of what I think religion is.
All right. Well, until we meet again.
Wait, when is that? Oh, we know when it is. It's after
10, 10, 10.
We had a whole discussion.
Where are we doing it?
Maybe at Connor's house, Connor.
Should we start the next book for that, or should we just talk more about
At the head?
I guess, like, there's the hotel, there's the appearance of the guards.
Great ending.
Let's do the last chapter of this one and the first of the next one. Let's do them both.
That could be fun. We'll see.
I really think every time we talk about like what we're gonna talk about, it's just a joke because we just are gonna like start where we start and get through what we get through.
Yeah, but I like to read the thing, like with.
Yeah.
I want to be kind of close to the meeting of refreshing myself on specific territory.
I think for the next however many times it takes, we should every time intend on finishing the book and talking about important parts. But that should be our intention. That's what we do at the end of each book.
I'm pretty sure that's what we've been doing for the last month.
Yeah, and I think that we shouldn't
We can do
fix it if it ain't broken.
But if I do,
So it might be broken.
But so what you're saying is that every week I need to start where we left off in the discussion and read to the end.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Well,
I got other books too.
We only have 2 chapters, right?
Yeah, only 2 chapters. We can finish it.
Oh no, we can definitely finish this one. But I think we kind of did finish chapter 12 today. We got just chapter 13 and this one left.
Let me see.
I think we can do chapter 13 and chapter 1 of the next guide next time. But
I think so.
I don't
It's a
think
noble
we have
goal.
any further
Why
than
not?
that.
Yeah.
All right.
It would be a miracle if we got
I'm going to stop the stream so everybody say bye to Johan.
Bye,
Bye, Johan.
Hey, yo.
Thank you for being